To in this first hour. But first, Mayor Brandon Johnson is taking questions, and he's speaking to reporters right now at City Hall. Lots of topics for him to discuss, so let's listen into this.
I hope you all will join me in praying for this young woman as well as her family, that not only does she survive, but that she heals. Now I want to give a quick update before we take just a few questions. We sent out this tool, which you can see on the screen, which offers aldermen yet another opportunity to provide my administration with recommendations or ideas that they may have around revenue or other cost-saving measures. There's been a lot of noise around possible efficiencies, so we want to make sure that we are giving aldermen every single opportunity to put forth concrete ideas to help us move forward with this budget. Our priorities are clear. We want to ultimately pass a budget that protects the programs that poor and working Chicagoans rely upon. We want to maintain our investments in community safety programs, and we want to fund it to the extent possible under our home rule authority with progressive revenue. Meaning taxes that are paid by large corporations or wealthy people rather than regressive taxes which tend to fall primarily or predominantly on poor and working people. We have been quite consistent on our priorities, but we are always open to new ideas. We remain open to compromise and working with anyone on the council, and we will continue to engage and offer opportunities to provide feedback throughout this budget process. Thank you, and now I'm willing to accept questions from any of you, but also you have Chairman Irvin with us, our Budget Director Guzman, our Chief Financial Officer Joe Jarowski, and our Comptroller, Mr. Mike Belsky.
All right, we'll just go down the list here. Hey, Mayor.
Hi.
Good morning.
Good afternoon.
You kind of said there's been a lot of noise about this feels almost like you're challenging the city council as opposed to engaging with them. If you see the difference, you know, you're saying they've been telling us to make these changes or look at efficiencies, and you've previously said we haven't actually gotten those proposals. Alderman Irvin has said the same. Is this really about engaging with the city council or calling them out?
This is about engagement.
How much will you consider what they provide, and how soon can you provide the turnaround if they're asking to evaluate a tax proposal?
Yeah, well, we'll take every single proposal seriously. That's why, we started this process, if you remember, well back in April, as well as this budget has been before the City Council for over a month now. Our team is fully available. We've made adjustments to our calendars so that we can assert ourselves in this moment. And as far as how soon, it just depends on how soon those ideas and recommendations come to us.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I know you addressed the blue line, but yesterday you called safety on the CTA your top priority when it comes to transportation, and you referenced those dollars we're going to be getting from Springfield. How will you specifically be changing safety measures on the CTA for riders who are moving forward?
Yeah, well, again, this is an awful, tragic incident, and safety as a whole is my top priority, not just for public transportation. And so there are appropriations that have been dedicated specifically around safety, but even more specifically around homelessness as well as mental health services, right? So now we have a governing structure that will allow for all voices to come together to think strategically about where those investments should rest. And so it's going to be a combination of all three: mental health and behavioral health care services, so that's going to require person power, but also for the homeless, which includes our ability to be able to ensure that those who are unhoused are not relying upon the public transportation as temporary housing. And as far as how we show up with law enforcement or security agencies, those things will be debated, but just know that it's a top priority, and that funding that we need from Springfield, I know people are looking at a year from now, but we're calling on Springfield to send that with some expediency.
Are any of those changes something that would be visible to riders? Will they be able to see the difference with those dollars and those changes?
Oh, absolutely, right? Look, we have a housing crisis across America, right? So with the support services for those who are unhoused, the expectation is that there are less people on the train that are there because they have nowhere to live. Same thing for mental and behavioral health care services. We already see a visible transformation in our city because we have more care programs that spread throughout the entire city of Chicago. The anticipation is that we'll see more of that. Same thing with the level of security and support that's actually visibly recognizable on the actual transportation system.
More officers. More officers then, and more visible officers.
I think it's too early to speculate like what that absolutely looks like. But again, the funding from Springfield is the most important thing. Without that funding, then none of this will be visibilized.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just follow up with one question about CTA. Brendan Riley, and I know you guys have heard him talk about this before, but New York City having a police officer patrolling intermittently on the trains or buses, that would have an impact. I mean, is this something that you've talked to the alderman about recently? Is it on the table, the possibility of having police officers? Because now, it's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, but they're on the platform patrolling, but they don't actually get on the train.
Well, I do know that they interact not just on the platform, but in and off the train as well. You know, look, I think there are a variety of ways in which we can see this manifest. I think what's most important is that there's actually funding to do it. Now, our ability to ensure that that funding matches the desired outcomes, that's something that we'll continue to work through. As long as people know that my top priority is to make sure that that funding comes from Springfield, it goes towards all the areas of need that will, strengthen safety on our public transportation system. That's the most important thing.
If I can just ask one more question.
Sure. I mean, you're looking around, but you're not looking at Casio, though, by the way. That was pretty smooth, though.
We know that one of the things that you focused in on when you were running and that you wanted to address homelessness, the crisis of homelessness and people with mental health problems on the street. And unfortunately, that did not pass. The voters rejected that. Are you thinking that there needs to be a more concerted effort, take another look at that proposal of trying to address the mental illness, the people on the street, the random punchers? I mean, this all indicates, there's people on the street that need help.
Yeah, they do. They do need help. There are a number of people who are suffering severely from trauma and mental illness, and it is becoming increasingly more dangerous. It's why, again, I've made the investments that I've made to reopen our mental health clinics. We have expanded the care program, but it has to go wider and deeper, quite frankly. And it's why in this budget we put forth the first of its kind social media amusement and responsibility tax that will be solely dedicated to this need, so that you can't have a mayor unilaterally defund something that's so critical to our overall safety and well-being. This is a big deal. This budget means a lot to so many people across the city, challenging these large corporations and the ultra-rich to pay their fair share. It is a matter of community safety. Should we look at other ways in which we can generate revenue progressively to respond to the mental health crisis that also dovetails into homelessness as well as crime? Absolutely. It's why we expanded our shelters by 126%. We actually have beds that are available for people in this budget. We have funded our rapid rehousing program as well. So we're doing our part, and we know we have to do more. That's why I believe that our efforts in Springfield collectively will be critical to ensure that these programs are fully funded, because it is a matter of keeping people safe. Thank you for those questions.
Hi again.
You're pretty resilient. Thank you for hanging around the last few days.
I want to ask again a question I think Alice asked you earlier about Alderman O'Shea's suggestion during his City Club appearance with Alderman Irvin and others about asking unions to come to the table and see if there are any concessions they're willing to make in order to help get to yes on a budget. Is that something you're open to, or does that take you down a layoff path that you don't want to go down?
Well, first of all, let me just say that we've worked with our labor partners, and there have been a number of means of cost savings that we've already implemented. And it's important that before we ask for more layoffs, we should make sure that corporations stay at the table. Right? That's what's most important here. But I'll pass it over to our budget director because we do have some things in the immediate as well as measures that we're looking at long term. But again, the corporations have to come to the table first. And right now we just haven't seen that.
Yeah, thank you for the question. And I will continue to reiterate, as I do every time I get in front of an alder, that we don't stop talking to the unions. We're constantly talking to our labor partners about not only operational items, but also our budget. They're actively involved in those conversations. In fact, a number of them sit on the budget working group that was created by this mayor, actively talking about solutions for resolving the city's fiscal condition. In particular, we are constantly, at the moment, talking with our labor partners around the cost of healthcare, because as we know, healthcare is one of the costs that goes up in not only our budget, but it's being debated at the federal level as well. And so we do not stop talking to our labor partners. We are constantly engaged in conversations around our budget with our labor partners, and that doesn't stop. What I will say is this mayor has put a red line on layoffs. We are not laying off, because what that ultimately means is that there will be a cut in service provisions. And what we have asked continually of our alders are, which service cuts are you okay having in this budget? And to that, Matt O'Shea has not given one proposal.
And another question, money related.
Is this also a follow-up from Alice's question?
No, I think this one might be
doing your own homework.
I think this one might be my own
question.
question, if that's all right with you.
It is fine.
We have not, I don't think, had a chance to hear from you since the city treasurer announced her plan to stop investing in T-bonds and other instruments of investment that the United States government has laid out, and to ask the council for approval to continue doing that going forward. I'm wondering if you believe that's an appropriate shift for the city's investment portfolio, and also your thoughts about Alderman Irvin's role in kicking that to rules.
Well, first of all, the city treasurer, I believe, is initiating a conversation around what role does government have moving forward in terms of how we protect our democracy and working people. And she's well within her jurisdiction to have that as a consideration. We have not had a substantive conversation about what that, means, long term. But, I'll continue to look and engage with her and other elected officials as we find stronger ways to hold systems accountable, to make sure that we're protecting our democracy. As far as, the alderman's decision to use the parliamentary procedures that have been used and practiced for a very long time. It's not unreasonable, or it's not unheard of where that type of action has been taken.
Given their relationship, should he have recused himself in your view?
Look, he's an alderman. I mean, his ability to legislate as well as use his authority, and I don't believe it's my position to dictate how an alder who is duly elected should conduct himself, particularly when they're working within the confines of the rules of City Council.
Hi, Mayor.
Hi.
Another labor question here.
Okay, your own.
The trade unions have come out against your TIF surplus, which the CFL said earlier would impede construction. Are their concerns valid, or do you think the trades are on the wrong side here?
Well, look, the TIF surplus is being used to make sure that our workers as well as our public institutions are supported, because we know that the Chicago Public Schools is still woefully underfunded by the state of Illinois, and I know there are efforts to make sure that the school district is fully funded, like schools are being pushed to be fully funded across the state of Illinois. So I don't think it's ever a bad idea to ensure that we're protecting workers, that we're protecting the Black Student Success funding, that we're protecting and investing in making sure that we have safe passage. I believe that's great that we're doing that. Same thing with our parks. We just had an announcement yesterday where Alderman David Moore has been working on the Ogden Park for a very long time, and the state of Illinois, along with the city of Chicago and our TIF dollars, are being used to expand park programs. And You know, if you hear from any family across the city, whether you're on the north side of Chicago or the south side of Chicago, we need more investments in our parks and our libraries. So I think we're always going to be on the right side when we're investing in people.
Could you also opine on the scrutiny over Congressman Chuy Garcia? Do you agree with the criticism that his ballot maneuver was anti-democratic? And how does it feel to see a fellow progressive under this national scrutiny?
Well, let me just say, you know, Congressman Garcia has just a long track record of progressive leadership. I mean, he's, you know, a member of the Rainbow Coalition, right, that led to significant transformation. You know, as far as, you know, this particular race and his decision not to run, you know, that was a personal decision for him. And, you know, my hope and my expectation is that he gets the quiet time that he deserves and needs in this moment. And, you know, I just hope that, you know, his long track record doesn't get undermined in this moment, because I think he's done such an incredible job at building coalition and fighting for working class people, and that's the focus that I'm going to maintain.
Hey, Mayor.
Hey.
Some of the alders think this portal really is just a way to slow the whole process down, and really is more of an effort just to shut down their ideas. Can you comment on that? And also, why not just do it the old-fashioned way and bring everybody into a room and hash it out? I mean, not just say, hey, if you want to reach me, but why don't you proactively bring everybody, including labor, corporations, alders, anybody, and just hash it out instead of doing portals and whatever?
Well, well, I mean, look, there's three things that I believe that we're talking about. People want a more open, transparent process, so we're providing that. There's been mid-year hearings. That's something that we've never done. We worked with City Council to be able to accomplish that. I think that was important. You know, as far as slowing it down, that's what they asked for, right? Because many folks thought that this was moving at a speed that was so. They just thought it was moving at a pace that was too fast for them. So the slowing down process is also another reaction and response to what they've asked for. And I think the third thing is we've done that, right? Those are called budget hearings. My team has always made themselves available. The chairman have run these committee meetings. You know, many of them have been, I believe, quite useful. I've had one-on-one conversations. So in that regard, I guess I never really consider myself old-fashioned, but thank you for humbling me. I guess we are kind of already going through the process that is, quite frankly, old-fashioned. So we're going through the process the way it has historically gone, but we've added some other elements to it that I believe is good for the modernization of our government, again, through mid-year hearings. You know, starting the process well back in April, we've had community town halls, round tables, one-on-one conversations. We've had briefings. I've sat and spoken with business leaders. That's why, you know, quite frankly, I'm a little taken aback by, you know, some of the pushback from the corporate head tax, because when I talk to CEOs, it doesn't come up. They talk about community safety and how the city can strengthen its efforts to better fund those programs. So we're literally responding to the things that people say they care about, whether that's slowing the process down, having more hearings, engaging earlier, talking to multiple entities. The EY report brought every single industry to the table. We're literally talking to everyone. So it's been a great exercise, and I believe we're going to ultimately pass a budget that protects all of Chicago.
And in terms of labor, I know, and that just said, you know, layoffs are off the table. But there's a lot of other things labor can do besides layoffs. I mean, there's a lot of concessions. So are you also saying that you will absolutely consider zero concessions from labor?
What concessions are you referring to? Just a second. Yeah, which concessions?
Benefits, furloughs. I mean, there's a lot of things that you can go to besides layoffs.
So we've already
layoffs is kind of the extreme, right?
Yeah. Well, we've already talked about benefits and furloughs. Again, that's a reduction of services.
Yeah, what I would say is
Not really.
furlough days, one, can only be done unilaterally on our non-represented staff, which is less than 10% of our staffing. And it's not been shown that it actually saves money, because until someone says that they want a reduction in services, the services are expected to continue at the volume and at the pace that they currently exist, which means we're now doing them with people on overtime, which is more expensive. So until someone again tells me what services they'd like for us to cut back on, furloughs are not going to produce the amount of savings that people think that they're going to produce.
All right, thank you for that question.
Forgive me if this is a crazy, silly, stupid question, but what about the city? You have more than 100 employees. Is the city taxed the head tax?
We're not a corporation.
So only.
Yeah, it's just for corporations, right? When the initial tax was put forward by Richard J. Daley, at that time we had more than 15 employees as well. But this is about corporations, right? Right, because government doesn't exist to draw a profit. Government exists to actually serve people. It's a difference.
All right.
And that's not a crazy question.
I've had several asked, so thank you.
You're welcome.
And then back to Garcia. The critics are going to say that you really didn't answer her question, and you're giving him a pass. And if it had been someone that you might not agree with, there would have been all kinds of people saying that what he did was absolutely wrong. Why are you still defending him?
I don't know if I would characterize it as to be defending him. I mean, I think with your colleague.
Defended him.
Well, I mean, okay, because I think what Congressman Garcia has done over the course of his career, I think those aspects are worth defending. If you're asking me to opine, on how he decided to retire, again, I think that's a personal decision. I can't tell you why he decided that this was the time for him to leave. I wish him well in his retirement, and, we're looking forward to continuing to build on the progressive movement that he's been a part of. Thank you all very much.
Okay, we were listening in there as Mayor Brandon Johnson and some of his staff, leaders here in the city, were taking questions from reporters about various topics, primarily the city budget. But he started with a more somber note, speaking about the horrible attack that took place on a CTA train this week on the Blue Line. That attack, a woman sitting minding her business who was doused with gasoline and then eventually lit on fire. So understandably, there are a lot of questions from people throughout Chicago and beyond right now as to what went wrong in that situation. The suspect now charged with terrorism charges federally, but there are more questions about safety in general on the CTA trains now. And so, he talked about money needing to come from Springfield for programs for homelessness and also for mental health services, so that you don't see in this housing crisis that he called it, people using our CTA trains as some type of housing in and of itself, but also more care programs for people who have mental illnesses. This particular suspect had a lengthy history of issues. I believe over 50 arrests that had happened in the past, and had also been in a psychiatric ward at one point in time and injured someone there. So he talked about wanting money expeditiously from Springfield to amp up his safety priorities. He talked about security and support on the transportation system overall, and how that needs to be moving forward. They also heard from the budget director, the city budget director, Annette Guzman, who says that she is trying to, when they talked about the budget, right now the mayor has a $1.15 million proposal that's being debated. There was a vote earlier this week in a finance committee. It went nowhere. So they're trying to work this out. So the budget director, Annette Guzman, spoke there saying that they're trying to avoid layoffs. She wants corporations at the table, that she's constantly talking to unions. They're trying to look at what service cuts, and they want to hear from the aldermen about what service cuts they could make that then could go into the budget that would help in some of the areas. If you think that the budget is too high as it is, what are some of the service cuts that could help in addressing that budget? So the mayor says that they have a new tool for aldermen to submit ideas. If you don't like what he proposed, submit an idea. He says he wants to use progressive revenue. He is a progressive. He wants to use progressive revenues to pay for his priorities, but he says he's open to new ideas and compromise. And there was a question about does this portal that they've created, does it slow down the overall process of getting ideas and actually getting to some solutions? But he says that slowing down the process was one of the things that many of the aldermen who have criticized him have asked for, that you would slow down the process and actually coming to an agreement on something in the end. So he says that he believes in the end that they will ultimately pass a budget that protects all of Chicago. A few other issues that they addressed here. There was an issue that was brought up in a question about the city treasurer just recently, about a week ago. The city treasurer made news here saying that she will no longer invest any of the city's $10 billion portfolio in U.S. Treasury bonds, and this is to protest the Trump administration. So they began asking some questions about that. Also a question about the TIF surplus. That's been a big talker. Well, it's always a big talker, but especially right now as people have received their property tax bills. And so one of the things, if you were with us when we spoke with the city or the Cook County treasurer earlier this week, I believe it was Monday when we spoke with Maria Pappas about those property tax bills that went out, she said, well, look right in the corner as to where your money is going. And if you see how the TIF surplus is being used, the unions are now opposing the TIF surplus, and so the mayor had to take some questions on that. Also, he was asked multiple times about Congressman Chuy Garcia. Congressman Chuy Garcia has been a longtime progressive and recently announced his retirement, but there's been a slew of controversy around how he announced that retirement and whether he was, in a sense, crowning his successor, if you will, that he announced it. It seemed like he was going to run. He was going to run again. He said he was going to run again initially, and therefore other people may not have gotten in the race because they thought that he, someone who's been around and been notable and very recognizable for many years, was staying in his seat, that they didn't try to run up against him. But in the very last hours of a window for another Democrat to actually file, that's when he finally said he was retiring. I say finally, maybe he knew all along that he intended to stay in. He says that the reasons why he announced that he was retiring had to do with his family and his own health. But in the end, there was only a small window that was left for anyone to get in the race, and it ended up being his chief of staff, Patty Garcia, no relation, but that just caused a lot of alarm bells for many people with that window for no one else to get in the race. And so he, just this week, was rebuked, reprimanded, whatever word you'd like to choose there, by his own party, the Democratic Party. And so the mayor was asked multiple questions about his thoughts on that, and he honestly really didn't hop in there to say that what the congressman did was wrong, actually. He spoke more to the history that comes with Chuy Garcia, the fact that he was a part of the Rainbow Coalition back in the days of Mayor Harold Washington and those things, but not actually saying that what he did was wrong. And I think that the reporters there were kind of pressing for some type of actual statement regarding how he went about retiring in this way that has led to the rebuke from other congressmen and women in the party. So those were some of the things that we listened into there. Again, this meeting with press today wasn't initially on the mayor's schedule, but he called for an open availability time that he could speak to reporters, and they filled the room there and asked many questions that will help in their reporting throughout the rest of the evening. So we had the opportunity to listen into that. Let me tell you about some of the other things that are coming up in this 1 o'clock hour. It's just about 1:30 right now. So 'tis the season for giving, and the White Sox are bringing some warmth to families from Chicago's Inglewood neighborhood. And I hear that they have a few recognizable friends that they're bringing along, if you will, some folks that they've enlisted the help of. White Sox Senior Vice President of Community Relations, Christine O'Reilly, is going to be joining me to talk about the big celebration. Also, the chatter in the cruise community. it seems right now to really be about what we spoke with TMZ about yesterday, and that is a teenager's body found on a ship, and now a shocking twist in the case as the FBI is investigating her stepbrother who could possibly face charges. So we're going to talk with a cruise expert about that conversation and other conversations that this tragedy is spurring up right now. And we're waiting to hear from a local restaurant owner who has gone through a terrible ordeal. She then realized she's far from alone in what she went through. So she's telling her story to make sure that others, one, are aware of what's happening if they haven't already been affected. She says that a chatbot farm spammed her restaurant with fake one-star reviews. So we're waiting to hear more about that. It's 1:30 though now. Let's take a quick break, and then we're going to bring in the White Sox to talk about what they have going on today. Welcome back. It's 1:33 right now, and White Sox front office staff are bringing some holiday cheer to more than 100 families locally from Chicago's Englewood neighborhood today. Christine O'Reilly, White Sox Senior Vice President of Community Relations, is here ahead of the big celebration. Thanks so much for taking a little time to chat beforehand.
Of course. Happy holidays. Here we go. The season's upon us.
The season is upon us, and it brings so many smiles to so many people in a time of great need. So tell me about what's getting ready to go down.
Yeah, every year we do a community outreach event. This year, we have been long-standing partners with Brightpoint, previously Children's Home and Aid, and supported many of their initiatives. And so this year, we actually are taking our holiday show on the road. Last year we did an event here at the ballpark with their Thriving Fathers program, but we're going down to the Mitzi Friedheim Early Childhood Center in Englewood on West 63rd Street. Southpaw's coming. He's going to be all holidayed up, and Southpaw's going to do visits to the classrooms and engage with the kids and do a little book reading. And then as the families come to pick up their kids, we've got a whole team of White Sox people who will be there just spreading holiday cheer. We've got snacks for the kids and the families and their siblings. And we're actually letting the kids build out little craft kits that they can take home. So they'll be able to get a craft box that they can decorate and then bring crayons and scissors and paints and all kinds of craft things so that they have something at home, maybe to keep themselves busy while mom and dad are getting all the rest of the holiday preparations. all set, but we love Bright Point. We love being down in Englewood. And to complement today's event, our staff for the past month has been donating winter coats, winter boots, diapers, wipes, really baby essentials. And we'll be delivering those to Bright Point after today so that they can distribute them to the many, many, many families that they serve across all of their programs. So we're just really excited to kick things off today.
So wonderful to hear all of it. And like you said, you all have worked with Bright Point before. You could partner with anyone. Why Bright Point?
Well, another piece of that story, and thank you for asking, is last year in celebration, we celebrated this past year, 2025, we celebrated the 125th anniversary of the Chicago White Sox. And from a White Sox charities side, to kind of elevate that philanthropically, we announced Diamond Impact Awards, and agencies across the city were welcome to submit a grant application funding for $125,000. And Bright Point rose to the top, and they were one of 5 agencies in the city who received $125,000.
Wow.
So we're also celebrating today, that Diamond Impact Award, and they were able to use that for some really critical capital programs, capital projects rather, at the Mitzi Friedheim Center that allows them to continue to provide their amazing services to all the kids and families there.
Yeah, what set them apart from, look, if you said $125,000, I'm sure you all had plenty of organizations saying, we need that, we need it, we need it. So what set them apart to rise to the top?
Yeah, with this grant giving, we were really looking for project-based, not really programmatic grants, but something for a project that was critically essential for service delivery, to really meeting people where they are and providing the best services possible. And actually at the Mitzi Friedheim Center, they had a grant where they were able to build play spaces, playgrounds on site, but they didn't have the funding to be able to get the surface on the playgrounds so that the kids could actually use it. So it was a capital to help them finish their play spaces, of putting in the special surface that they needed at the play spaces. And they also needed water heaters. And I know that's not, really fun and exciting to say, wow, we bought water heaters. But if they were not able to have the operational water heaters, they couldn't provide the services, they couldn't continue their license. And they provide such an amazing, beautiful, critical service in a really important community. So that's what made Bright Point rise to the top.
Awesome. And describe to me, obviously you've been with the White Sox for a while now, what this event today, what the atmosphere is like.
It's, well, here we're going to be at the center with all these beautiful little faces. It's an early childhood center. So we just are hoping that, it's the holiday, the closer you get to, the end of December, holiday stuff is kind of coming fast and furious. So we wanted to be on the front end of it and really surprise the kids and their families and kick off this whole season of giving with today's event. Southpaw brings a vibe of his own, which is crazy. So I know that it's going to be lively. I kind of feel bad for the care providers that they're going to have to calm the kids down after we leave. But I expect it to just be so joyful. And like I said, we couldn't be more happy than doing this today with a partner that we have been supporting through regular annual grant funding, coupled with the Diamond Impact Award. It's just so heartwarming and just so beautiful.
Heartwarming for sure. Christine, thank you so much for your time and for your heart, for how you all share it on a regular basis.
Oh, thank you. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Can't believe we're there.
Take care.
All right, take care.
Thanks.
All right, everyone. It's about 1:40, and I mentioned the fact that, a restaurant owner we really needed to speak with for the crazy ordeal that she's been through. Obviously, the internet certainly brings both negative and positive things to anyone's life who really depends on it for what you do. Just think about it. Do influencers, if they post about a great place to eat, does it make you want to try that same place? For me, yeah. Does it possibly keep you away if it's a bad review? Well, this restaurant owner says a star rating can make or break a business. And after what she's been through, she definitely has a story to tell. So Alpana Singh, the owner of Alpana Restaurant, is joining me now to talk about it. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. You know, if you told me a week ago that I would be the victim of an extortion attempt for somebody holding our digital reputation hostage, I'd be like, okay, that sounds good. But that's exactly what happened. I was sitting at home on Saturday and I got this text message from my manager. She's like, we just got 15 one-star reviews. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And I remember I was online on Instagram and my friend Mari has a restaurant called Show. And this happened to her a week and a half ago where somebody came in, left a bunch of one-star reviews, tanked her rating from like a 4.8 down to a 3.9. And we all know, like, you know, just intuitively when we're looking for a place to eat or somebody recommends a place, we look at it. And if we see a 3.9, we're like, ooh, what's wrong with that place, right? We're so now driven by these scores and how they drive our behavior and decision to go and, you know, frequent a business. I mean, we're just becoming increasingly reliant on these platforms. And so I immediately freaked out. I'm like, oh my gosh, because our score went from 4.5 down to like 4.1. And it's such a helpless feeling because it's not like there's tech support at Google. It's not like there's a phone number you can call. So I just went in and started reporting them and just hoping that somebody at Google would see this. And then I reached out to Mari and she told me that there's actually this situation is so prevalent now with people bombing one stars, and you're probably wondering why they want to do this, and it's an extortion attempt because one of the reviews said, please contact me to get these one stars removed. So you contact them via WhatsApp and they're like, send me $500 and I'll delete the reviews. Of course I didn't do that because Google tells you to not respond, don't engage, because it can actually make it worse because then they know you're a live target. And then they'll say, send me 500 more, or I'm going to do 30 more reviews. And, you know, for business, when people look at that rating, that's our lifeblood. That's our digital reputation, like I said. And so it was really unnerving. So Mari told me that there's now a Google extortion, there's a merchant extortion form that you can fill out. That's how prevalent this is. And it's been happening to restaurants all over the country, actually all over the world. It happened to a bunch of restaurants in Montreal recently, happened to restaurants in Philadelphia, in Florida. So it's, you know, happening in Chicago, obviously. And what's interesting is the names that were used and the type of reviews that were left were the exact same names and reviews from the folks that got hit in Montreal and also Mari. So they're targeting restaurants in hopes of, you know, extorting money out of them, which is really unnerving.
Yeah, it's a big difference from a person coming in not liking their experience and leaving a review versus like a bot farm.
Correct. Yes. And I think any restaurant or business owner will tell you, we don't always get it right. You know, we don't. I mean, but I also don't wake up in the morning thinking how I'm going to ruin somebody's birthday. We're human. And so I appreciate and welcome legitimate criticism. Like, okay, you're right. We did not hit the mark there. And I'm very sorry. And I want to make it right. You know, where people sometimes leave these one stars without any comment, I get a little frustrated with that because it's kind of like, I can't do much with that. But I just want to get the word out there that this is happening so that other businesses don't freak out, you know, and to go to that Google merchant extortion form. But I think a larger conversation needs to be had in our society as far as there's always nuance with these scores, you know, and to distill somebody's hard work and creativity and all that we're doing down to a 4.2. You know, it even as I say it, it sounds kind of silly, right? And so I think, you know, I hosted a TV show for years where we had 3 everyday Chicagoans that recommended a restaurant, and that word of mouth, I think, still holds weight. You know, just get recommendations from your friends. You know, look at it, look at the reviews for the photos. You know, I mean, they are helpful. I use them myself. But also kind of like Rotten Tomatoes, where, you know, if a movie gets 76%, like, I'm not watching that, you know, and that's from an artist perspective, that hurts, you know, that somebody doesn't want to watch my movie because it only got 76%.
Yeah.
I mean, you see where I'm going with this?
I absolutely do. And that's kind of one of the things I wanted to ask you about, the toll that all of this has taken on you.
It was, you know, I was struck by this sort of new world that we're in, where how stressful it is to have a hit on our digital reputation. And I kept thinking about that one Black Mirror episode called Nosedive, where we're living in a society where we score everybody. And when somebody gives you a 1 star, you freak out because it lowers your social score. And I think for restaurants, that's what it feels like. It's like a punch in the gut. When I get an email in the morning that says somebody left a 1 star, 2 star, it ruins my day. You know, it really affects me. It affects my mental health because, you know, somebody doesn't like your baby, you know, somebody doesn't like what you're doing, and somebody had a bad time, and it really affects me. And I imagine that most business owners are the same way. You know, the restaurant business is the hardest business on the planet. You know, it's got a 95% failure rate, and to wake up in the morning despite everything you're doing and somebody's like, 1 star, this place sucks, it's horrible, I'm never coming back. You know, we take that personally. It really hurts.
Yeah. And how are things now?
So Google was great. Google removed everything within 24 hours, and I want to thank the community at large. You know, I had posted about this on my social media, and our fans of the restaurant, you know, we're a neighborhood restaurant right in the Gold Coast, and people came out in droves. 63 people left 5-star reviews for us, saying how much they loved it. They came here for their birthday, how special we made them feel. So I got to say, you know, it was not a pleasant experience to go through, but it was worth it just to have all that warmth and love and support. I mean, I left a message on my social media to everybody to thank them. I said, your love and your support from the community helped me get through this. So I was very appreciative of that.
And we actually reached out to Google Reviews before we spoke with you. They haven't responded to us yet. So maybe we need that 24-hour turnaround too. I don't know here. What would you like to see done differently to prevent this from happening to other people?
So I think in an ideal world, you know, I don't know anything about running a tech giant. You know, I make burgers and pasta, right? I think it would go a long way if there was some type of a verification system where you have to digitally check into a place before you can review it. So your location data matches up that you are actually at that place. Because right now, good or bad, you know, somebody can leave a review from, you know, a beach in Thailand and give me a 1 star. On the reverse of that, I can also go to 35 of my friends and say, hey, leave me a 5-star review. So it makes me question how accurate that number is. And it's not foolproof, right? Because people can manipulate it in either direction. But I will also say that I just am so like blown away by how important that score has become. You know, back in the day, you know, if a food critic came in and gave you a good review, you were set for a year, right? If you were Restaurant of the Year, if you won like a James Beard Award, I mean, you were set. And nowadays there's all these other influences coming in, no pun intended, but yes, you know, you've got your influencers in TikTok, but 90% of all searches are done via Google. They have 90 to 92% market share. And the first thing people see is that digital storefront of your score. And we're human. And when we see a 4.1, we're like, I don't know. You know, I was at a cocktail party last night, and this guy told me that his friend won't go to a restaurant if it's below 4.4. And I'm like, no, you need to tell him that that score may not be entirely accurate because you can manipulate it, right? You can have people write reviews that have never been there. Also, people who have never been there can leave reviews. So you just kind of have to take it with a grain of salt. At the end of the day, just talk to your friends, talk to your family. Word of mouth is still the best.
I've often seen, you know, and heard that, you know, when you look at reviews, if they're all good or all bad, that's probably a red flag either way.
Yeah, I think humans are smart. They can read through, but that's assuming we have time to actually read it. You know, we're under so much pressure and time crunch nowadays that we just kind of look, flash, 4.7, great, let's book there. Right? Because you've got 1,000 other things to do, right? So I can't fault people for relying on it. I just think like anything in life, you just kind of have to sometimes just kind of take a pause, and you might be missing out on the best meal of your life at a 4.1 restaurant.
Good point. Good point. Okay, before I let you go, if someone hasn't heard of your restaurant, what do they need to know about it?
Please come visit me and leave me a good review. All 5 stars. No, I'm at 831 North State Street. We're open for dinner 7 nights a week, and then also for weekend brunch from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. So we're right there at State and Pearson, right next to the Quinlan School of Business. We serve wine-inspired cuisine, but it's I think it's just a good neighborhood spot. I think so. I'm biased. So take my review with a grain of salt.
Great chatting with you today. I love your energy. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Take care.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
5-star review for the interview. We'll be right back, everyone. $152 right now, and yesterday we spoke with one of the producers from TMZ about a recent incident on a cruise ship where a young woman's body was found like under a bed. She was on a cruise with family members, so there were lots of questions as to how this could have even happened. Who's responsible for it? The investigation is ongoing, but it just took a pretty shocking twist with the FBI now investigating her stepbrother who could possibly face charges. However it ends up, a life was lost, and there are plenty of questions being asked. I want to bring in Melissa Newman, who is a cruise expert, so we can just talk about some of the broader conversations that are maybe coming from this tragedy happening. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Would you say that an incident like this keeps people from wanting to cruise?
It does, and it's really unfortunate because I think cruising is a really fantastic way to travel. But obviously, a case like this is going to grab a lot of national headlines and attention, and people that have never cruised before see a story like this that unfolds. And the question that comes to mind then is cruising safe, or is it safe to cruise with my children? Because unfortunately, the victim here was just 18 years old.
Yeah, I think usually the conversation around issues, if you will, for cruises usually surrounds like norovirus or something like this. This obviously is on a much greater scale in terms of weight. What do I do if something like this happens?
Right. And what I like to remind folks is that cruising is incredibly safe. In fact, I just posted a video the other day about this. I make cruise content about how committing a crime on a cruise ship is pretty much the most terrible place that you can commit a crime. It's a contained environment with a limited number of people. There are security, there's jails on board, which a lot of people don't realize there's holding cells. There are cameras absolutely everywhere, and there's a digital record of basically all passengers, where they're going and where they are at any given time. So while for now law enforcement has been pretty tight-lipped about this, I am absolutely confident that they probably already know who the perpetrator is. There's some kind of word out about who they think it is, but I'm confident that justice will be served, and I'm confident that cruising is safe.
So if something happens, there's like a security guard or a whole detail that you can like run to or give a tip to?
So folks don't realize this, but you can actually call 911 from any cruise ship telephone. Now, normally that is deployed for medical emergencies, but it can be used for any emergency on the ship. So cruise lines have entire security detail on the cruise ship. And when you cruise, you'll see them. Usually they're kind of quietly standing off to the side and observing passengers. And if something happens, again, there is a holding cell. Now, in some cases, I've seen it happen myself. There's stateroom jail where if someone commits a crime that maybe is not worthy of being held in the jail cell on a cruise ship, they will confine you to your stateroom. So they will put you in your stateroom, make sure, of course, you have food and water, and they will position a security guard in a chair outside of your room, making sure that you don't come or go. I've actually seen that firsthand. So that's an option as well for security on cruise ships.
It seems odd, though, that like, I know the word has to get around that something bad happened, and then you're just still stuck on the high seas.
Yes, and cruise lines are pretty careful about what they tell passengers and in what detail. So I'm a big fan of Facebook groups. Social media has its upsides and its downsides, but when I cruise, I always find the Facebook group for that particular cruise. Now, these are groups that are not sanctioned or run by the cruise lines. They're created by someone that's on that particular sailing. Because often when situations like this and other things happen, cruisers have to rely on each other to communicate with one another. So I had folks that were actually on Carnival Horizon, which is where this incident occurred, who were emailing me from the ship saying things are happening. We're being told we have to exit our stateroom early. No one's telling us much. Carnival's being very tight-lipped, and understandably so. But when you're in the midst of it and you're contained on a cruise ship, people will have a natural curiosity and they want to know what's happening. They want to know if they're safe. They want to know how it's going to impact their travel and their cruise.
Yeah, and are there some, like, I mean, you said you witnessed a situation firsthand. What, if you don't mind me asking, what was that situation?
The situation that I observed personally was a domestic argument. A man and a woman were sharing a stateroom. They got into an argument. And again, I only know this because of what was shared in the Facebook group of other cruise passengers that had observed it, that the gentleman in question threatened to jump off the ship. So obviously cruise lines take this very seriously, even if it's just a verbal threat. Threatening to jump off a cruise ship is akin to getting on an airplane and saying the B word, right? So they take it very seriously and they don't want someone to actually follow through with that. So this person was then confined to his stateroom. But all I knew was I was on the same hall. I saw a security officer sitting outside, and being naturally curious, I'm like, what's going on? And I want to know if I'm safe because this is a few rooms down from my own room. And of course, he wouldn't tell me anything, as they typically won't do. But it was on the Facebook group that I learned what had happened from another passenger, and they had explained why this man was confined to his stateroom.
That in and of itself would kind of ruin my trip. What support is offered to other passengers who are finding out this bad news?
Not much, honestly. A lot of times too on cruise ships, even things happen that passengers are never even aware of. It just happened in this particular situation that it was a few staterooms down from mine. I could see it happening. And if I were not on the Facebook group and talking about it or had seen someone else post about it, I probably would not have even known. So even if you've taken a cruise before, something may have happened on board. Someone could have been arrested. Someone could have been kicked off the ship at a different port. And unless you visually observe that yourself or you see chatter about it on the Facebook groups, you probably would never know. In fact, while this Anna Kepner case, this tragic case, is huge national news, I'm pretty confident there are folks that were on that sailing that probably don't even know what has happened because they don't pay much attention to these things or they're not in the Facebook groups. All they know is that, the cruise line makes an announcement and maybe says, well, we're going to require that you disembark the ship a little earlier, but they typically don't tell you why. And it's understandable. The cruise lines are in a tough situation where they have to balance, respecting confidentiality of passengers, and in this case, you're talking about an active law enforcement investigation, but balancing that with cruisers' natural human curiosity and wanting to know how it's going to affect them, that's a fine line they have to walk.
Yeah, and like what level does it have to get to? I mean, a body being found seems to be the highest, but what level does it have to be at for some of the protocols to be put in place for you to like turn around or to find a port and disembark?
So the Anna Kepner case is kind of unique in that it happened toward the end of the cruise. So my understanding is that the body was found basically on the last day or close to the last day. Now, had the incident occurred earlier in the cruise, they may have handled that differently. And I've had passenger emergencies happen on several cruises that I've been on, even a medical evacuation on a cruise I took a few months ago. And had I not seen it on the Facebook group, I wouldn't have known about it. Now, sometimes on a cruise, you'll hear a certain code, Alpha, 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 code Bravo. These codes have different meanings. You don't always know what they are because they vary from cruise line to cruise line. Some of them indicate man overboard, which is not uncommon either. But it really depends on the situation and when it occurs during the cruise, the front end or the back end. That probably is going to inform how the cruise line management determines how they're going to handle it and how they're going to communicate that with the passengers on board.
Okay, so finding the right Facebook group to monitor passenger conversations seems to be a top tip to know what's going on your cruise. But what are some other pieces of advice you give to people about kind of being surveillance conscious or knowing what's going on that cruise that maybe the workers don't or can't tell you?
Well, unfortunately, I'm sad to say there's not much else short of being part of these Facebook groups or just interacting in person with other people, because rumor mills and grapevines happen on cruise ships as well. Cruising is wonderful in many ways, and one thing that makes it distinctive from other forms of travel is that you are in a contained environment with other people, and depending on the size of the ship, that could be 3,000-4,000 people, but it's the same 3,000 or 4,000 people, and you're a captive audience out at sea, going to different ports for a 5 to 7 day or whatever the cruise length period is. So getting to know other cruisers is, a way to kind of communicate with one another of what's happening, what they observe, things like that. Because I will tell you, security will not tell you, the cruise line will not tell you. Sometimes they will make an announcement, like with the medical evacuation. They did eventually, the captain came over the PA system and alerted everyone of kind of the basics of what had happened. But then we were kind of left wondering what happened with this person. And some people had met this woman that was affected by the medical evacuation and wanted to know, is she okay? And the only way that we were able to find out that she was okay was after the cruise. Her sister posted in the Facebook page and said, she suffered a widowmaker heart attack. She's fine. Thank you all for your prayers and your thoughts. But short of that, you would otherwise be left in the dark and you would not really have any idea. But my other big tip for cruisers is to stay vigilant, because you can have a false sense of security sometimes on a cruise ship because you do have security. You do have a holding cell on board. You do see cameras absolutely everywhere. You are in a contained environment, but that doesn't mean that you're perfectly safe, right? So you have to still follow the same smart vigilance that you would if you're taking any other vacation, even if it's on sea versus at land.
Yeah, and again, aside from like this situation is maybe we'll sit this over here as a worst case type of scenario, but what are some of the things that you see go wrong on cruise ships?
Probably the most common thing that happens in terms of a bad behavior or criminal activity is people overindulging in alcohol. Unfortunately, indulging in the drink package is a part of cruise culture. And I see people try to joke about they have a 15 drink a day maximum with the drink package. They're going to go crazy and try to maximize the value, and they just get absolutely hammered on a cruise, and that can lead to a lot of bad behavior. So typically you're going to see fights. A lot of times they don't really become viral unless they escalate to a brawl, which happens. There was a big brawl in Galveston back in the spring. Several times a year, there's a brawl that makes the rounds on social media, and usually that involves the nightclub or the late night dining spots, and it almost always involves overconsumption of alcohol. So those are the kind of things that are more prevalent in terms of criminal behavior on cruise lines. And I just tell folks, don't overindulge in alcohol, avoid the late night spots, because that's typically where these sorts of things pop off when they do, and that sort of thing. But that's a kind of, again, good practice that you're going to follow on any type of vacation on land or at sea.
You know, we had a situation, a horrible situation that happened here on a CTA train, and there are specific charges for that type of transportation. Do you know whether there's like an elevated charge for something happening on a cruise?
So I wouldn't necessarily say elevated, but it actually gets much murkier because then maritime law prevails. And so typically when something like this, in the Anna Kepner case as well, when it happens at sea, the question is, where does the jurisdictional law prevail? And so is it Miami, where the cruise is disembarking from? Is it in Mexico, which is where the family had, spent the day before and presumably may or may not have been the location where the ship was at when the crime was perpetrated? Is it out to sea? So when these types of things escalate to a high level of criminal behavior on a cruise ship, that's why you're going to see the FBI involved. And of course, in this case, given the extreme case of it, also stands to reason why the FBI is involved.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point there. The literal murky waters of something happening on a cruise ship. Obviously, when you hear things like this, it makes you really question going on one. But if you're putting together your types of vacations, where does a cruise fall at this point for you?
I mean, for me, cruising is always going to be number one. I love to cruise. I cruise monthly. It's what I do. I create content around it and share that. I cruise with my young daughters. One of my daughters is close to Anna's age, so this hits really close to home, and my heart goes out to her family. But if you look at the cases like this that happen on a cruise ship compared to incidences like this that happen on land, all-inclusives, hotels, other types of destinations, you're going to find that the prevalence of crime, especially at this level where it escalates to homicide, is going to be far, far lower on a cruise because, again, you're in that contained environment. There is a lot of security. There's cameras. Someone presumably couldn't kidnap someone because you're out at sea, right? So there actually are some kind of inherent ways of cruising that make it safer than other forms of travel. So I still think cruising is the safest way to go. It's just when situations like this happen, it does tend to draw more attention. And in this case, it's a very extreme case as well. So this is understandably going to draw a lot of attention. But my confidence in cruising being a safe way to travel has not diminished at all.
Wow. Okay. Give me a little bit of background about Professor Melissa, where people can find you and what they typically go to you for.
So I am an actual university professor. I just love to cruise. I teach online. So I cruise and teach from sea. And as an educator, I love providing resources to people at no cost to help them learn more about cruising, the destinations where they're going to travel. I share my recommendations of what's worth the money, what's not worth the money. I always give my honest take. I'm known for that. So I have a website, profmelissa.com. I am also on most of the social media channels. And I produce video content and written long form content and YouTube videos as well to help educate people and first-time cruisers who have never taken a cruise and maybe think that it is for them. Or they hear stories like this and they're concerned and they want to know, is cruising safe? I try to always give the truth, be very honest and transparent so people know what they can expect.
Thank you so much for your time. You enlightened me about quite a few things there, Professor Melissa. We appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. All right. Thank you. It's 2:08 right now. Obviously, I wish that we could have talked to her about the fun of cruising, but this story about this young woman whose life was taken on a cruise ship was still has people talking and wondering what went wrong and how it could have been prevented. We'll be right back with much more. 2:10 right now. Thanks for being here in our 2 o'clock hour, everyone. We have plenty to come in this hour. Just to kind of give you a sense of what is to come, we're going to talk about the jobs report. It's from September, but we've seen a lot of volatility in the markets over the last several days, and a lot of it pointed back to investors waiting to see what came from that September's jobs report. It came out today. We're going to talk with an expert from Bankrate about that and how we should take it moving forward, what they saw today, and how we should take it. Multiple times already, I've mentioned that horrible tragedy that happened on the CTA train this week, and we're going to bring in former FBI agent Ross Rice to talk a little bit more about safety on the CTA, what we can do differently, and what people should take from that as well, what did happen, and something we never want to see happen again. Also, we're going to talk about personality traits and have some fun with a study that is out about that. But right now, there's so much conversation about the city's budget, and that is for the upcoming year. But there's also the Chicago Department of Planning and Development's proposal for the Central Area Plan 2045. I know it's a long way away, but you got to talk about things before they actually come to fruition, right? Let's listen in.
Well, he's pointing that out. I can tell you that the average income for effectively Class A comparable apartments right now for one bedrooms approaching $3,200.
$3,200 a month for an affordable?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Market rate.
No, I'm asking.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were asking about the market rates. The affordable, the one bedroom is, well, I can look it up.
And do you know what size it's at, square feet around?
On our building, the average square footage is just under 600 square feet.
Under 600?
For all units.
For all the units. $3,200 for under 600 square feet for a market rate unit.
That's not true of our building. That's the area itself.
Okay.
We built smaller unit sizes to ensure that we could provide attainable market rate for unit in a very in-demand location, while also providing the 54 affordable units at AMI percentages between 40 and 80%.
Okay.
Commissioner Dowd, I do have that information for you. And for the record, my name is Sarah Barn, and I'm zoning counsel for the applicant. Or Commissioner Dowd, the average individual income in that neighborhood is $120,285.
Okay, my question was, how much is an affordable unit for 600 square feet or less? You said less, right?
So the affordable units will be between 12 and 1300. At the 60% level, and yeah, so we'll say between 12 and 1300.
Commissioner Vestano?
Thank you, Chair. A few things. So, like, number one, to follow up on Chairwoman Dell's comments, before this goes before the zoning committee, could you provide the income grading for the affordable units in the building? Because we see that the range is going to be 40% to 80% AMI. I think breaking out that income grading is always helpful for alders and understanding the affordability. I have one question that I think is more of a EBD question, and I apologize for forgetting this, but category D.9 workforce development under the Sustainable Development Policy. Can somebody define what workforce development means in terms of yeah?
Okay, I have Brad who updates Sustainable Development Policy to hit that.
Sure. Brad Rodak from the Department of Planning and Development. I could kind of elaborate a little bit. So what we put that in the policy to try and encourage developers and operators to have some sort of workforce development component that looks at perhaps targeting.
All right, they didn't have the best audio there, but let me kind of go over some of the things in the release that they sent us about this meeting that they're having right now. So they say following 2 years of public engagement, market studies, and goal setting, the plan that they're putting forth anticipates more than $45 billion in forthcoming construction-related investment downtown. Again, they're looking at 2045. Don't get this confused with the 2026 budget. They're looking 20 years down the road here. And they say that the area's 184,000 residents and 758,000 jobs are expected to increase by 110 new residents, 50,000 new jobs, 13,000 new hotel rooms, and 65,000 new housing units. So let's hope that comes to fruition. It would definitely help with some of the other issues that we're seeing. If you've been listening to our conversations about the property tax bills, much of that has surrounded what's not happening downtown and how if they can't collect it from downtown, then it gets pushed off into the neighborhoods. So hopefully these types of things may help in that respect in the years to come. But again, this was the Chicago Plan Commission adoption. They say this is the first downtown development plan proposed in more than 20 years, again, for another 20 years. So we'll see what happens with it. This was just a public hearing that we could listen into for that. But I also promised you a conversation about personality traits, and we want to get to that right now. The lead author of a new study, Northwestern study, Kayla Garner, is joining me now. I can't wait to have this conversation. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. I am truly intrigued by this. So you all found that personality traits and zip code may determine political preferences?
Yeah, so being a personality psychologist, there were a ton of mixed findings on how personality traits might relate to political beliefs. There's also a ton of literature showing that geographic context has a really profound influence on political beliefs as well. So we were really interested in how these two things might interact, essentially to relate to political beliefs.
It's fascinating, really. How do you explain the surprising flip, if you will, where the same personality trait then predicts different ideologies?
Yeah, so there are several personality traits that have these inherent motivations to aid in people getting along and getting ahead in their social environments. So people that are higher on these traits might have one political belief in one area and a different in another. So this drive to get along that's associated with these personality traits results in being more likely to be conservative in a conservative area or being more likely to be liberal in a liberal area. So these traits essentially lead individuals to do whatever they can to best fit in and get along in their environments.
Okay. So the same trait in two different environments could lead to, explain that a little bit further for me.
Yeah, so two of our big findings in the paper were with trait agreeableness and extroversion. So agreeableness involves cooperation, empathy, compassion. Extroversion involves being reward-driven and more sociable. So we found that with these two traits, people that were higher with them in more conservative areas were more likely to be higher in conservative ideology, and people that were higher on these traits in more liberal areas were more likely to be higher in liberal ideology. So basically the same trait is motivating people to fit into their environment, but how that relates to political ideology depends on whatever is most prominent within that area.
Gotcha. Okay, so you all studied more than 150,000 people. What are some of the patterns that emerged?
Yeah, so we had a really cool opportunity to look at this interaction between personality and environment using the SAPA project created by my PhD advisor, Dr. William Ravel. So we had representation from all over the entire US, over 8,000 zip codes, so representation from every single state. A lot of studies that have looked at the relationship between personality traits and political ideology in the past have been focused on like one localized area where the study was taking place, basically. So we were able to take a more broad look on how this association plays out, like across different places, because we have this really big data set.
Mm-hmm. I think one aspect of this that should be, maybe we should dive deeper into, is how it contributes or doesn't contribute, the things that you found contribute to political polarization. Can you talk about that conversation as you all were doing your studies?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really great point and question. Thank you. Essentially, like wanting to get along with others in your social environment is generally functional, but this personality trait can also reinforce the dominant political beliefs in an area. So this motivation can unintentionally strengthen the political tendencies of like a given geographical location, which can in turn contribute to polarization. So for some individuals, their ideology may partly reflect what's helping them best fit in or get along or get ahead in their local community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like when you look and you see a row of the same thing in a particular neighborhood, but then there's that one sign that doesn't fit in with all the other ones in that neighborhood, and you're wondering, like, ooh, is the person trying to be spicy? Or, I mean, that will to get along versus, I really don't care what you think. This is what I believe.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a testament to the major role that personality traits can play in helping understand these things and why people might ascribe to a political belief that's really common in their area versus maybe deviating from it and having other reasons for why they have those beliefs.
Yeah. What made you all want to do this study?
Yeah, so I'm very interested in geographical and personality psychology. It's what I'm doing my PhD on. And I noticed very early on that there were a lot of associations between personality traits and various ideologies and behaviors that weren't necessarily consistent from study to study. So I wanted to kind of take this more broad geographical perspective on it, where we accounted for social context and how social context might be interacting with people's personality traits to result in those different ideologies and behaviors. So we were really, we anticipated these findings. We were really happy, obviously, that they matched our hypotheses and stuff. But I think this is a really good thing for personality psychology and taking into account the really important role that social context plays for how personality might express itself, how the same personality might express itself differently in one geographical location as opposed to another.
Mm-hmm. Did you look at things like openness or risk-taking and how they fit into a liberal or conservative context?
Yeah, so we did find that trait openness, which also involves openness to new ideas, like intellectuality. There's many different components to it. It tends to have a pretty strong association with having a liberal personality ideology. But in conservative areas, that association is it's not as strong, essentially. So that was the one trait where we didn't find a major influence of context like we did with all of the other traits. It's still relevant and still worth noting and stuff. Thanks for the question.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, going back to that, the street concept of the street signs you see, because I do think about this when I see street signs, and I'm like, I think anyone who's inquisitive, and especially you doing a PhD, would want to dig deeper into what you're seeing there. So does moving to a new place change a person's politics, or do we all seem to kind of congregate where we're generally finding the same type of ideology?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So unfortunately, that's something that was outside the scope of our study, so I can't answer that backed with our own data. But one of the major theories we used for studying this was person-environment fit theory, which is basically this idea that people are attracted to environments that fit their ideologies and beliefs. Or they might conform like to their environment if they can't attract out an environment that matches them. And if those two options aren't available, they may construct it within the environment they already live in. So all three of these different mechanisms may contribute to why people live in the places they do and hold the beliefs that they do. But determining exactly which factors influencing every individual person outside the scope of our study, but super interesting for sure.
Yeah. Did you all look at like the influence of social media or local media on them?
We did not. I would anticipate like the effects of local media, if they're congruent with prominent political ideologies in the area, would definitely have an effect. But yeah, this is not something that we accounted for in our study.
Well, what are you thinking that lawmakers possibly could actually take from you all's findings?
Yeah, no, that's another great question. So we didn't study any specific interventions here, but I do hope that this knowledge that some people's political beliefs stem from how their personalities like help them navigate their environment can offer a more nuanced understanding of ideology. So ideology isn't necessarily always just based off of like logical processing of the data, but there's also this major influential factor of how just fitting in and getting along, like for people that are higher in those personality traits, influences belief. So hopefully this awareness might be able to help lawmakers design messaging for individuals who are higher on these orientations. With the understanding that at the end of the day, people are trying to make the best of their social environments, and political beliefs can often stem from that.
And you're in London, did I get that right?
Yes, I'm a PhD student at Northwestern, but I was currently in London when we got the opportunity for this interview. So yeah, so zooming from far away, but still really happy to be here.
Okay. What made you choose Northwestern?
Northwestern's a really great school with just so many opportunities for students, really good faculty. I've had the privilege of working with incredibly kind mentors, like who are so focused on just like my intellectual growth and ability to be creative with research. Like this study, it wasn't necessarily something that was being researched in the lab that I was in before, but my advisor was happy to let me explore it and study it. So yeah, there's some great folks, great academics working at Northwestern, and it's really been, it's been a privilege to be able to work with all of them.
And what do you take from the importance of the timing of this study?
I think that this study can be humanizing, maybe in a sense. I think in a really polarized time, like it's really easy for both sides to demonize like each other in some ways. So being able to understand that why people hold their political beliefs might not just be about their own like logical thinking, but maybe more about like their motivations to get along in their social environments. Like it's something that can maybe unite people because it's something that we all have in common. So it's like if you are higher in those personality traits that make you more motivated to get along and fit in your environment. Being in a conservative place as opposed to a liberal like has a different effect, but ultimately like the motivations are inherently the same. So yeah, people are just trying to make the best of their social environments, and believing in something, believing in a political ideology might be more about what it does for their place in a local environment than purely just logically taking in every single data point and coming to a conclusion.
Well, certainly a little more understanding in the world could go a long way. Kayla, thank you so much for your time, and best of luck to you on your educational journey.
Thank you so much.
All right. You take care. It's just about 2:30, everyone. We'll be right back. 2:31 right now, and we want to point your attention or turn it back to this young woman who is fighting for her life right now in critical condition after being attacked on a CTA train. There are so many questions about how this could have happened and how it could be prevented for the many people who take the train or any type of public transportation moving forward. Let's go ahead and bring in a former FBI agent, Ross Rice. Ross, thank you so much for your time.
Hi, Anita. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. What was your first reaction to hearing, let me ask you this first, about what happened on the CTA train?
Well, my initial reaction was shock that something like this would happen. But as we get into it more, the charges were announced and the background of the person that committed this heinous act became known. Unfortunately, it wasn't surprising.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so when you say not surprising, we're really speaking of the long history of issues around this particular suspect.
Exactly. It's quite apparent, at least to me from the outside, that this person has unaddressed mental health issues. And that has been the cause of many of the crimes, the horrific crimes that we've seen locally and nationally over the past 10, 15 years. And the situation isn't getting any better. The problem is getting worse. And it really needs to be addressed from a legal standpoint. Trying to get somebody involuntarily committed in Illinois or virtually anywhere else in the country is next to impossible. And until that changes and people that have these issues can get the help that they need in a confined, controlled environment, I'm afraid we're going to continue to see these problems.
Yeah, I was kind of reading through the documents, and he had actually been released from a psychiatric hospital after knocking someone out, unconscious. So then you wonder, okay, if the person isn't well enough to even be in a psych ward, how in the world could they be well enough to be just among the general public?
They can't be. And as evidenced by the crime that he's charged with now, he shouldn't have been out and about. And it appears that he was in court several weeks earlier for a similar offense, and he was released on some sort of electronic monitoring, which he obviously didn't abide by, and he wasn't closely monitored enough. So this should have never happened. It's unfortunate. And I hope the young lady that was injured makes a full and complete recovery.
Certainly, we're all wishing for that, that she will make a full recovery. I don't know if you ever fully get past something like this happening to you,
No.
Even if she physically recovers. You brought up one of the systems, I'll say, that is really being called into question right now, and that is electronic monitoring in the state of Illinois and the city of Chicago. Obviously, there have been some recent changes in terms of who is monitoring them.
That's true. And what people don't realize is if you're on monitoring of some sort, someone has to be monitoring you. So let's extrapolate that. How many people are on some sort of electronic monitoring? And then how many people are available to monitor them? And if they violate the terms or conditions of the electronic monitoring, then what? Are they taken into custody? Are they held pre-trial? There's just a lot of unanswered questions here that I think need to be addressed, and they weren't really thought through, in my opinion, when the Safety Act was enacted a couple years ago, and it essentially abolished cash bail.
And that's was going to be another point of contention for a lot of people right now, that the multitude of arrests, and I believe there were like over 50. I mean, there were tons of mugshots of this man over the years. Should have said that this was a person who should be behind bars for a very long time, and that never really happened.
Well, it's definitely a person that should have been receiving medical attention, medical treatment for diagnosed or undiagnosed mental health problems, at the very least, if not incarcerated until those problems were addressed. He should not have been released on any type of electronic monitoring because it just isn't effective, Anita. There's just not enough people doing the actual monitoring, and when they violate the terms and conditions of their release, then you have to find them. And that's what happened here. He was out and about. There's video of him filling up a glass bottle, I believe it was a tea bottle, with gasoline, and then half an hour later, he's on the CTA, and for no apparent reason, he douses a female passenger with the gasoline and sets her on fire. I mean, that's just unconscionable.
It really is. And from the perspective that we can have at this point in time, it seems like it could have been anyone.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It doesn't appear that this woman had any interaction or any contact with the suspect. She was minding her own business, going home from work, as I understand it, looking at her phone, and the next thing she knows, she's been set on fire. And it's just a tragedy.
Very much so. So let's talk about prevention. Maybe even from a personal standpoint. She was just on her phone on the train. This man is behind her and walks up and douses her with that gasoline. So it seems as though some type of attack was premeditated, maybe not the person, but there was some premeditation in putting gasoline in a bottle at least. Is there anything that we can do differently?
I wish I had an answer to that question, but unfortunately I don't. This young lady was looking at her on her phone, I'm not sure which, and she wasn't obviously paying attention to her surroundings, but she didn't feel a need to. And if you look at the similar case that was in, I believe, Charlotte, North Carolina, earlier this year, where a young Ukrainian woman was killed from behind for no apparent reason. Somebody snuck up from behind her. So situational awareness only goes so far. You can't be in a position where when you're out in public, you're on guard 24/7. It's just impractical. So I don't know what more can be done other than identifying people that have these issues and making sure they're not out in public until they've been treated.
So let's talk about another system here. Are the CTA trains safe?
Well, that's a great question. I'm sure that this incident is going to deter people from riding the CTA, at least in the short term. Thousands of people take CTA trains and buses every day, and they get to and from their destinations without incident. It's when something like this happens, what we would call a high-profile incident, that gets people's attention. Generally speaking, it's safe, but I think the woman that's in the hospital right now fighting for her life would say no.
Right.
And no one wants to be in that situation. How you can prevent this, what more the CTA or the Chicago police can do, I don't know. You can't have an officer on every train and every bus 24/7. There are just not enough police officers. So it comes down to personal responsibility, but as I pointed out, that's almost impossible to do.
Yeah, and I think it's New York that has had the National Guard on some of their trains. Do you think that this calls for that step?
I don't think it would hurt. National Guard is not normally trained for law enforcement or deterrence, but they can be. And within the military, there are military police units. They have a slightly different mission, but you know, the General Assembly just passed a mass transit bill to fund mass transit to the tune of billions of dollars. Well, that's great, but if people don't feel confident riding mass transit, whether it's the CTA or the commuter trains or buses, then what's the point of having the funding if no one's on it? So something needs to be done. I don't think, to get back to your question, I don't think having the National Guard deployed in trouble areas and on CTA trains and buses is a bad idea. It can't hurt, right? It can't make the situation any worse.
You know, I would ask you, are the recent incidents we've seen, are they consistent with any broader national trends on transit crime that you know of?
I don't think so. There have been sporadic reports of similar incidents or crime on mass transit throughout the country. They're few and far between, fortunately, but the problem is when they happen and they get this type of publicity, as I mentioned before, it deters people from riding mass transit. And it gets back to the original point, then if people aren't going to ride it because they don't feel safe, then why fund it? Why have it? And people need to feel safe riding mass transit in order for them to take it.
Yeah, I remember, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, when there were like 4 people who were killed, I believe, at the end of the line and on the train.
Yep.
And, you know, that opened up a conversation against systems, opened up a conversation about people who sleep on trains, or at this time of year may find the train to be like a home in the middle of the night versus sleeping out and about in the city.
Absolutely. And that gets back to the problem of homelessness, having enough shelters. Again, this is an anecdotal observation. I can't pull up any facts to support this, but I'm sure many of the people that are homeless in Chicago and other parts of the country have either substance abuse issues or mental health issues that are being inadequately addressed. So yeah, they're going to ride the trains, they're going to ride the buses to stay warm, especially in the winter, and you increase the risk of incidents like this happening.
Yeah. So what are some signs that we should look for that something might not be quite right? And what can you do on a train?
Well, the most important thing, Anita, is what we call situational awareness. You can't be on the phone, you can't be watching a movie or streaming a video. You have to put the phone down and you just have to be alert as to who's around you. Does anyone make you feel uncomfortable? Do you have a rapid means of escape if a situation arises? And it's very hard for people to do that in this day and age, but that is probably the most important thing to do as far as protecting yourself. And then you want to minimize your exposure. It's safer to ride the trains and to ride mass transit during rush hour than it is late at night. But for some people, that's not an option.
Yeah.
So really, situational awareness, know your surroundings, know who's by you, and try to sit with your back to a wall so you're looking out, not have somebody sitting behind you that you can't see.
Yeah, yeah. Goodness grief. Are there any other takeaways from this that you think we should be making note of?
Well, beyond the incident itself and the need for situational awareness and being aware of your surroundings, I think it was interesting that this case has been charged federally. There is a federal statute involving terrorism and mass transit. I think this is a little bit of a stretch. It wasn't what the authors of that legislation really had in mind, but it certainly fits. And in this case, with the criminal history of the defendant, the seriousness of the crime, I think it was a bold and appropriate step for the U.S. Attorney in Chicago to use that statute to address this case.
Do you think it will be used as a political ploy?
I'm not sure I follow, Anita.
Do you think that it will be used as a marker of, okay, here's what's happening in Chicago. Yet again, there is an issue that's not being addressed in Chicago, that type of thing?
Oh, I'm sure that President Trump is going to take note of this and make an issue out of it. On the other hand, I think the mayor and I think the governor should take note of this as well and say, you know, we really need to address safety, public safety on mass transit if we're going to have people ride it. What the appropriate response is, I'm not sure. You mentioned deploying the National Guard. If the governor wants to do that and the mayor allows it, I think it would be a good first step. Like I said before, there aren't enough police officers in Chicago to have one on every train and every bus. And I don't know that there's enough National Guard troops. But the more of a presence that you have, the safer people are going to feel. And I think it will act as a deterrent against some people. Those with mental health issues, I don't think it's going to be much of a deterrent at all. but it could be a preventative. They could intervene before the situation gets out of control.
Well, again, I think the most important thing is that this young woman recovers as much physically as possible, but lots of conversations about where we go moving forward from this for sure. Thank you so much for your time, Ross. We always appreciate it.
My pleasure, Anita. Thank you.
All right, you take care. It's 2:47 right now. Let's take a quick break. Just about 2:50, everyone. Thanks for staying here with us on Chicago Live. And for days, we have seen market volatility that's had people asking, oh, wait a minute, where is this coming from and what could make it better? One of the things that has been indicated day after day was that investors were waiting to see the September jobs report. It is finally out. So let's talk with Mark Hamrick, Senior Economic Analyst with Bankrate, about what it says and what we can take from it. Thank you for your time.
Hello, good to be with you, Anita.
Always great having you here. So give us first just an update on what the new jobs report shows.
It's new, but it's stale, Anita, because this is a PS report, pre-shutdown. It was captured around the 12th of September, and it'll be December before we know it, right? So, but we will take what we can get in the sense of having resumption of federal data flow. What did it tell us? I think one of the takeaways here is the job market is not robust. We did have better than expected jobs creation. Payrolls expanded by 119,000. That's within the context of about 5 million people being hired in the U.S. in a given month. The unemployment rate went up for a second straight month, now at 4.4%. We know around the Chicago area, the last time we had the federal unemployment rate released, that was at 4.6, so we're a little higher in the Chicago area than at least in recent history. One of the things that is most concerning here, Anita, is that we had downward revisions for both the months of July and August, and those revisions, either up or down or sideways, are a regular part of this process, but they were downward, meaning the number of jobs created now in retrospect is lower. And for August, we had a contraction in hiring. Why is that significant? Because for the second month this year, we now have had a contraction in payrolls. The only other times that has happened over the last 15 years was in 2020. We know what was happening then, and 2010, which was coming out of the great financial crisis. So I don't take any positivity away from this jobs report. You can say the economy wasn't falling off a cliff, but it wasn't robust in terms of the broad brushstrokes of the job market in the month of September.
Wow. Let me ask if you can maybe juxtapose your expectations versus any surprises.
In terms of going forward, I think we should brace ourselves for more volatility. I've been saying for some time now that as we catch up with our understanding of what has been and is happening with the economy, financial markets will need to adjust. And I think that's some of what we're seeing in the stock market today. The stock market moves up and down, and we've been in a very robust period for stock prices, broadly speaking, the S&P 500 being the primary benchmark, thanks to the so-called Magnificent Seven, the tech titans, which have been doing most of the heavy lifting. When we surveyed economists on this question, Anita, we asked them about the outlook through the third quarter of next year, and they really saw more of the same. Further cooling in the job market, not falling out of bed, but also still elevated prices. They don't believe that inflation is going to get back down to the Federal Reserve's 2% target for quite some time, and they look for a modest rise in the unemployment rate and further slowing or at least moderate hiring. So obviously things can change, and they often do, but I don't think that we have very optimistic expectations for the job market. The greatest risk here is that the unemployment goes up rather than goes down in a meaningful way.
You pointed out a concerning trend was the lack of sectors with healthy job creation. What are some of the sectors that did see healthy gains and others that are lacking?
And it is an exclusive club, and that's part of the problem here, Anita. Once again, we see healthcare and social assistance. And those are not a backbone of a robust job market. You know, we have an aging population. Healthcare comprises 1/5 of our economy, sometimes to our detriment, given the high costs that are associated with that. Fortunately, we did see leisure and hospitality, so raise a glass to those who are frequenting food and drinking establishments. Unfortunately, those do not tend to be high-paying jobs. So across the board, a lack of robust jobs creation is really, I think, the underlying theme here. We'd love to see the goods producing sector. It's been a primary goal of the administration to get manufacturing going. Manufacturing is not doing particularly well in this economy. Hasn't been for some time. And I do think, Anita, you know, we think ahead to the fact that we will be lacking an October jobs report, because remember, this is the September reading. We just simply won't have one for the first time in history because of the federal government shutdown. And then we have to fast forward to mid-December when we get the November snapshot. So we're still operating in a fog. And as Fed Chairman Jerome Powell has said, if you're operating in a fog, if you're driving, you slow down. And I think that's what central bankers may be doing, in the sense of waiting for more data. And unfortunately, I think consumers and business leaders are saying, you know, there's so much uncertainty and volatility right now. It's not time to be a hero.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so you mentioned the Fed Chair Jerome Powell. The last time we heard from him, he was cutting a quarter point. But he also signaled the fact that there may be no change in December. Are you hearing anything differently about that?
Federal Reserve officials, Anita, are very deeply divided on this question, and essentially they're trying to parse, should they be most attentive to concern about the job market weakening further? And remember that Chairman Powell at the last news conference said that downside risks were a primary concern for he and his colleagues. That's why they cut interest rates twice in a row. On the other side of the decision-making spectrum is the concern that inflation remains elevated. And as I said before, the outlook is that prices are certainly going to remain elevated. The question is, what is the rate of change for inflation month over month and year over year? And here's another takeaway, I think, and that is that as we all try to make sense of all of this, and that's part of my job, is that I don't think a quarter point rate cut in December, if the Fed were to do that, is going to usher in a celebratory holiday season. I don't think it really makes that much of a difference. The financial markets will go back and forth over that question, but another 0.25% to the downside for the Fed's short-term interest rate, not a long-term rate like a mortgage, probably doesn't affect us all that much. It'll really be more dependent on what they do in 2026, how the economy unfolds. Oh, by the way, that's also a midterm election year.
Yeah. One can only wonder what those conversations are going to be like. So have we gotten the latest inflation report since the shutdown?
We had one mid-shutdown, Anita, which was released only to sort of give us the delta or what we should expect for 2026 for the cost of living increase for Social Security recipients, and that will be a historically low increase because of the behavior of inflation very recently. But year over year, inflation is up 3%. And so the Fed has a target of 2%. That's not at 2%. That is the year over year read on that. There's other ways to slice and dice those numbers. But listen, whether it's the bank rate surveys, whether it's what we see from other gauges of consumer psychology, sentiment, and confidence, inflation, elevated prices are the primary concern, and the health of the job market is somewhat competing with that. And so, I think these are going to be persistent.
What do you think this report that we do have now tells us about the affordability pressures, though, on workers that they continue to face?
My great colleague Sarah Foster, who is an Illinois native and produces tremendous stories and analysis for Bankrate.com, recently was leading a survey of everyday Americans that found that more than 40% of Americans had not had a paycheck over the previous, I should have misstated that, a pay raise over the previous year. And so this was a survey of individuals across the country meant to replicate, a good sample of America. And yet, within this report today, average hourly earnings are up at a decent clip. But, I think the question really is, are we making progress across the spectrum, with these affordability challenges? And I think the sense on the part of many Americans is they are not. Why is that? Because so many things can sort of knock you out of balance with that, whether it's the coming increases in health insurance costs in 2026, whether it is the cost of buying a car with the average price of a new car at roughly $50,000, with borrowing costs, meaning interest rates, still somewhat elevated, and mortgage rates are not so low that people feel like they can rush in to buy a home these days in many markets. So I think the struggle is real, and I think the struggle is going to be with us for the foreseeable future. The fact that we have an unemployment rate as low as 4.4% is something that we welcome, but we'll continue to watch whether it rises, in the year ahead. And, all personal finances and even to some degree economies are local, and that is indicative also of what people experience in the sector in which they're employed and how they're faring with their personal finances.
Yeah, and kind of breaking it down, did you all go deeper to look at whether certain regions are seeing losses more so than the other ones, or gains more so than others, or even demographically how this jobs report looks?
Yeah, well, first of all, this report does not parse on a geographical basis. But what I would say is that if we look across a broader cross-section of employment data, there's a good deal of stress there. In other words, job search times are long. We've been talking for months now about how recent college graduates have been struggling, and there is some research out there that indicates that perhaps in the white-collar sector, younger workers are beginning to be adversely affected by the advent of AI. Our friends with Challenger, Gray, and Christmas here in Chicago that monitor job cut announcements have been indicating they think AI is perhaps also to blame for some of the job cutting, but you also have to acknowledge that the biggest piece of investing by business right now is in the artificial intelligence and data center space. So that really gets to what we talk about quite often here, and that is that this is in many ways a have and have not economy. And so if you're with a company that is growing great guns, if they're in that AI space, happy days are here again. But if you're in manufacturing, if you're one which is not enjoying a significant amount of investment on the part of your enterprise, you're waiting for winter to end. And for example, the housing sector is one of those, very much interest rate sensitive, where it's been a tough time for housing, and it's been a tough time for everybody associated with that, including some mortgage lenders, it's home improvement centers, it's those selling furniture. So there's a lot of people feeding from the trough of the housing market, and right now some are going hungry.
When you talk about feeding off the trough of the housing market, or even in manufacturing, does that point back to tariffs?
It's definitely not helpful. I mean, we have seen some improvement. For example, very recently in the nation's trade deficit in the month of August, that's the latest snapshot. But for example, that's been an impediment for manufacturers who have been trying to figure out, well, where do we level out with tariffs? And it does appear that the worst case scenarios, or in other words, the highest level of these taxes on imports, have been averted, but it's also been a very volatile and uncertain environment. And so once again, we go back to the premise that business leaders don't like trying to navigate an uncertain environment. And so there are a lot of adjustments going on in business. I think it's quite remarkable how agile many businesses have been. But not every business is agile, and you know who's at the front of that line? It's small and mid-sized businesses that don't have the resources, the capital, or the workers to make significant adjustments. And if you're a small business operator that's reliant, for example, on imports coming in from China, you are really having a tough time right now.
Okay, before I let you go, how is the market looking today now that we do have this new jobs report?
Well, it's been a volatile day, a lot of swings in the major averages. As you can see there, the Dow Industrials average is down not quite 1%, and the NASDAQ is down more than that, very technology weighted index. So I would say, buckle in. Most of us are not short-term investors. Day traders tend to be thinned out of the herd very quickly. So most people are in this for the long term, saving for their retirement, investing for their retirement. And when you have a decline in the market, you're getting in at lower prices.
Okay. All right. Mark, it's always great to have you here. Thank you so much.
My pleasure, and happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving. All right. Take care. 3:03. We'll be right back. Welcome back. It's 3:06 right now. Let me tell you about some of the things that we're getting to in this 3 o'clock hour, our final hour here on Chicago Live. We're going to speak with a security expert and take that conversation about what happened on the CTA from a different perspective, and that is, what do we do as bystanders? You heard that there were some folks who jumped in to at least douse the woman or at least get out the flames when she got off of the train. But if something does happen on the train, what is everybody else supposed to do? How can we be of assistance to each other? We'll talk with a security expert about how to help in that time, in someone's time of need, without putting your own life in danger. But right now, we want to also bring in Edgar Lopez. He is the president and CEO of Aspira Illinois. He says that the charter school network won't make payroll next week. Meanwhile, CPS is blasting them for alleged financial negligence. So there's a lot going on here. Edgar, thank you so much for your time.
Hello, how are you? Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm glad that we're able to have this conversation. Obviously, there's a lot here, so let's kind of parse through it. If CPS is wrong about the financial negligence, what is keeping you from being able to make payroll next week?
The bottom line is two things, major factors why not only Aspira, but quite a few charter schools are having financial problems. One of them is that CPS by law is supposed to fund charter schools between 97 and 103%. They fund us at 83%. So right at the get-go, there's millions of dollars that we don't get, that we're supposed to get legally from CPS. The second thing that is just as important is the interference by CPS and CTU, because they're one of the same. CTU and CPS are all one of the same. Blocking our access to students, manipulating the Go CPS website so that kids don't apply at charters and Aspira and Aspira. For that matter, what happened last year, and now it's affecting us. We lost $1.5 million between one quarter and the next. Between the first and second quarter, we lost $1.5 million. We're already tight as it is. That is just impossible to make payroll. It's impossible. They manipulated the system where we only got 46 kids apply to one of our biggest school. On a bad year, we get close to 100 on a bad year. And so that's part of it. And the other thing is that the teacher salaries are just ridiculous. They're just too high. I'm all for teachers getting paid, but if we're getting real money from CPS, so the combination of two things: CPS doesn't fund us correctly, legally what they're supposed to send us, and then our salaries and our expenses. We all have seen the inflation. We've seen the light bills, gas bills, everything go up. So it doesn't work out.
And you closed a middle school in Albany Park last year. I see that you still have the Business and Finance High School and an early college high school in Avondale in the Northwest Side. So are they on the chopping block next?
Well, I think that charter schools were created for a reason. There's no secret that the union wants to shut down charters. Stacey Gates herself said it in a letter to the editor of the Chicago Tribune about a month ago. She said, we need to close charters. The experiment is over. So they're doing everything behind the scenes, manipulating the system, working with CPS to shut down charters. It's hard to fight this when the powers that be don't want you.
Well, but when you say manipulating the system, what exactly do you mean? Because, of course, I don't know if there's any teacher that would say that they get paid what they're worth. And then there are operating expenses, but operating expenses are going up for everyone, nationwide. So how are they manipulating the system against you all?
So when I say manipulating the system, I'm talking about the Go CPS system. Go CPS is a website that parents can go in and apply for any school in the city, right? CPS, community schools, the big, charters, contract schools, that's the website that they use. So this whole last year, charges didn't even appear in the drop down. Aspira didn't appear in the drop down. So they told us a week ago, oh, it's the algorithm that we use. And I'm like, wait a minute, we asked for 250 seats. Our contract reads that we can get up to 1,000 in one school, and we get 46 seats. Of course, we didn't know this because they're not transparent. They don't tell us everything from the get-go. So I hope you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah, so that goes back into the enrollment at the end of the day, if people can't even find it on a website. What are the perks for a student going to one of your schools versus another school in CPS?
Well, I was in the legislature when we created charter schools. Never in my wildest dream I thought I was going to be running charter schools. That wasn't my goal back 30 years ago. But the reason is because there's certain things that we can do under the law that CPS can't do. Example, we can use X amount, 25% of our teachers don't have to be certified. So let me give you an example. We want to create a media class. We can hire someone like you to come and teach that class, right? We can get doctors who have retired, to teach science. Now, eventually they have to get certified, but we can bring people in to do certain things that they wouldn't be able to do in a public school. The other thing, Aspira is very unique. It's a Latino school, 96% Latino. Most of our teachers speak Spanish. There's a lot of kids now that can't speak any Spanish. They weren't born here. They come from different countries. We have teachers, not all, but we have teachers who do dual language. They teach in both languages. There's class. I know a teacher who teaches. She told me that there's classes that she teaches all Spanish. CPS doesn't do that, and there's other activities that you can do that CPS wouldn't do.
So, looking at the situation, even with like Acero, which I would say, Aspira and Acero would be similar and maybe not the same, but similar in terms of operating within the district. Did you learn any lessons from them having to close or shutter all those schools?
Well, the lesson learned is that what people don't realize is that nothing's changed. The funding mechanism the CPS uses to underfund charters hasn't changed. And so if you look at the Acero, we knew that they weren't going to make it. They knew they weren't going to make it after their contract with the teachers. It's just ridiculous. You can't pay it. If CPS gives us more money, I have no problem paying the teachers, what they want or what they should get. I have no problem doing that. But when we're getting adequate funding, legally funding from CPS, what they're supposed to give us. And so with Acero, even Acero, if you look at it, they save 5 or 6 schools. They're not going to shut down, but they become CPS schools. They're no longer Acero schools. And that's been the plan from CTU and CPS all along, is to take these students, put them back in CPS. And they're doing it, and they call it the fool. Even Aspira here, the union says, oh, we're going to fight for Aspira. We're going to save Aspira. We care the kids. We love the kids. It's all for the kids. But what they're not saying is, we might save Aspira, but for it to become a CPS school. And they follow the same rules and regulations that CPS has.
But CPS is having its own issues. So it doesn't seem like like it's in a better situation too much.
No, I agree. But, legally we're supposed to get this money. That's the law. The law is 97 to 103%. And don't manipulate the system. Let people choose. The reason I voted for charter schools 25 years, 30 years ago was because I believe that people should have a choice. And they'll pick the best school for their kids. And so, so you're right. They're in the same position, but why? Why are they in the same position? They created our situation. We didn't create theirs.
So what would your message then be to Stacey Davis Gates?
I have a meeting with the union tomorrow. And I'm going to tell them straight out exactly what I'm going to tell you now. Because they talk about they care for the kids. They love the kids. They're going to fight for the kids. Fight for Aspira. Yes, fight for Aspira. But be real and be straightforward and tell the truth. The truth is, they want to save Aspira in name only, because Stacey Gates could walk in right now to CPS and say, back off charters. We fully fund charters, but she won't do that because that's not her plan. Her plan is to shut down charters. So my message to her is very simple. Be truthful and come on and speak for charter schools to be funded what's legally right. Just do the right thing. But they're not going to do it. That's not part of our plan.
Mm-hmm. And again, I guess they would say, do they have the resources to keep funding the charters?
They have the resources because our kids are CPS kids. What they take, the reason why we get down to 83% is that they take out, they give you X amount of dollars, and then they start taking for insurance or for insurance. They took out for a loan that they took out for the network or for CPS. Why do we got to pay for that? Are the district schools paying for that, or for the pension that they pay for teachers? We pay the pension for our teachers. We don't depend on CPS for them on a separate line item for it, but they take it out there out of our main payout. That's the reason why we get down to 83%.
All right. Are you looking at layoffs?
Yeah, we've already laid off in the last year and a half, 2 years that I became CEO. We laid off 27 administrative staff. I don't have a CFO. Between my COO and I, we're doing the CFO work. Mm-hmm. And we're not CFOs, but we know, our background. We have a background in finance, and so, but that's not our job. CFO needs to be full-time, 100% focused on this, right? This is not the only thing I have. I do a bunch of stuff. We wear different hats because we're short in cash.
Okay, so you have a discussion with the union tomorrow. What else are you trying to do right now to save your schools?
So we're talking. We're talking with CPS. They reached out. So got an email today. They want more information. Some of the same information that we've sent them 3 times. So we'll send it again. And I believe they want to make sure we make payroll. That's my understanding, but until they tell me specifically, I can't say that, but, it'll be a shame that people don't get paid, but we're just waiting for CPS. I've taken money from everywhere, all our bank accounts. I've done all sorts of stuff to make it happen till now. And we've maintained it till we lost the $1.5 million. Once we lost the 1.5, there's no way we can meet it.
Okay. All right. Edgar Lopez, President and CEO of Aspira of Illinois. Thank you so much for your time. Please keep us updated on where things go from here.
Okay. Thank you. Have a good day. Thank you for having me.
You take care.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving. 3:19, everyone. Let's take a quick break. 3:21, everyone. You can see here, Chief Meteorologist Emily Walls here to get us up to date on what's happening outside. We have been quite literally in a fog today.
Yes, and yesterday and the day before. Yeah, so we're stuck in the cloud cover. That's not really going to change until we get into this weekend. So we're stuck with it, but I will say that temperatures, the average for this time of the year has now dropped to 46 degrees. So today we're actually above that. So we have the cloud cover, but it's not too bad temperature-wise.
Okay.
We're sitting in the mid to upper 40s for a lot of us, and that's where we're going to be again tomorrow too. But tomorrow we're going to be adding in a couple rain chances, but mainly near and south of I-80. So those of us that are near and north of I-80, you know, it's just going to look like more of the same, what we've been dealing with.
I winced when you said rain chances, selfishly.
Yeah.
But where do we stand in terms of the need for rain?
So it really depends on where you're at. Places like the south suburbs, if you're hugging that Indiana, Illinois line, then you're in good shape. Over into Northwest Indiana, we're in good shape. If you think back to that snow event that we had, you know, about 2 weeks ago now, that made a huge difference. So folks that got a lot of that snow, it really helped with the drought conditions. But most of northeastern Illinois, you know, we were left out, with the exception, of course, being Lake County that got all of that snow. But most areas across northeastern Illinois are still considered to be in a moderate or a severe drought. And this is something that you really want to get ahead of in the fall before winter, because if you think about snow and snow liquid ratios, so that's really a key component when we were talking about drought during the winter, because typically your average snowfall, you have a snow liquid ratio that's about 10 to 1.
Okay.
So that means 10 inches of snow per 1 inch of water. Now, in the summertime, when you get an inch of rainfall, it's a lot, but it oftentimes will fall all at once, right? So we're used to getting that kind of rainfall. But in the winter, to get an inch of snow or an inch of liquid, that's equivalent of 10 inches of snow in most cases. So you just don't see that very often. So you always want to get ahead of the drought going into winter, because you're certainly not going to gain ground in the winter. So any amount of rain that we can get right now is actually a really good thing. But tomorrow it's just going to be very scattered. It's going to be the south suburbs. It's going to be northwest Indiana. So not so much the locations that really need it.
Let me break down the days, because there's a lot going on this weekend. So tomorrow is the Christmas tree lighting downtown in Millennium Park.
But
so are we talking about in the evening seeing it?
I think we're good here in the city. So any tree lightings that are going to be going on tomorrow in Chicago or even just west of Chicago, we're fine from the rain. It's all locations south. So if there's any tree lightings taking place in the south suburbs, northwest Indiana, that's where we're going to be dealing with some of those, at least spotty showers. But we're not talking heavy downpours. We're not talking about storms. So it should just be periodic showers here or there. I wouldn't change your plans if that's what we're going, to ask here.
People want to get in the season.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people are already in this season, although the weather really isn't feeling like it. But Anita, we have some really big changes that are coming our way going into December. We all know the buzzword polar vortex, right?
Yeah.
Well, guess what? It's
coming our way?
It's coming our way. So is it going to be as extreme as what we would get in January or February? No. But late this month, so after Thanksgiving, and the days immediately following Thanksgiving, so about a week from today, and then going into the first week of December, we are so easily looking at high temperatures that are only in the 30s, low temperatures that are going to be in the 20s. If not, if we have clear skies, could easily drop into the teens. So a little bit of a cold snap coming our way, and we're gaining confidence in that forecast too as we get a little bit closer to it. But early December is looking a little cold.
How often do we talk about a polar vortex?
So in the wintertime, we talk about it fairly often. So essentially, you always have this polar air that's surrounding the North Pole, right? So there's going to be something that's taking place that's called sudden stratospheric warming. That's a really fancy way to say that there's going to be warming in the upper atmosphere, and that's actually going to help to break down that polar air by the poles and send it down to the mid-latitudes, which is us. It's going to become our problem. So it happened. It's not rare, but I would say that it's not as common to happen this early in the season.
That was going to be my question. Is it early or on time? So
a little early.
A little early.
A little early.
Okay, we've got a little time to get prepared at least.
We do. We have time.
All right, Saturday's the Magnificent Lights. I saw Santa today. He's ready.
You did?
Santa is ready.
Okay, well, you know what, this weekend, I've been kind of like preaching this during the newscast too. This weekend, if you have outdoor plans or you have holiday decorations that you love to light up at your home, do it this weekend.
Okay.
Because next weekend is going to be significantly colder after that cold air starts to build in. So this weekend, we're going to be in the 50s, Anita. It's going to be really nice. We're near 50 on Saturday. We're going to have some sunshine. Sunday, of course, we have the Bears game too.
Bears and the Steelers.
And it looks beautiful. It's going to be nice. We're
Tailgate
gonna be
ready.
Yes, mid
Get
to
it
upper
ready.
50s and plenty of sunshine too.
All right.
Yeah.
Brighten it up at least for the Bears.
Yes. Well, we can do it this weekend. I don't know about any following weekends.
We'll hold still with what we've got right now.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Emily.
You're
we always
welcome.
appreciate it. It's 3:27. We'll be right back. Just about 3:30 right now. Thanks everyone for staying with us here on Chicago Live. Our last 30 minutes together, and we want to go back to that conversation that has just perplexed so many of us about what happened on the CTA train this week. A woman fighting for her life right now, and there are just so many different aspects of it that make you wonder, you know, what can be done differently in the future. Could it have been just any one of us? What do we do if we're in a certain situation on a train or any type of mass transit? I want to bring in Stephen Rotolo. He is a security expert, a retired assistant port authority chief from New Jersey and New York, 33 years in law enforcement. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I wish that we were speaking under better circumstances, but we really wanted to discuss with you the issue of how to be a better bystander. I mean, if something does go wrong, you spent a large portion of your career in counterterrorism, so mass transit would be a part of what you looked at on a regular basis. What do we do?
So there's a lot of things we can do, and it starts with situational awareness, being aware of your surroundings. This young woman was looking at her phone when the attack occurred, not blaming her, but you know, when you're on a city subway, a city bus, look at the young lady in Charlotte who got stabbed in the back of the neck as she was looking at her phone. Be aware of your surroundings. And that's a lot of things. That's not looking at your phone. That's not AirPods or headphones in. So you couldn't hear somebody approaching you. You couldn't hear footsteps. And listen, at the end of the day, when you're sitting there and you are the victim of an attack, you know, and this poor young lady, as soon as she smelled the gasoline, there's a good chance if she was lit on fire, which did happen, that you're going to die. You have to fight like your life depends on it. And you're talking about bystanders. We'll go back to Charlotte. Nobody helped that young woman on the bus. Nobody helped this young lady till she got to the platform. That's when the Good Samaritans extinguished her. Listen, we have to become better human beings too, where, at the end of the day, how do you know that he's not going to move from that young lady lighting her on fire to attacking other people? Like I said, somebody's got to step in. First of all, I get it. The fear kicks in. You're fearing for your own life because you see, obviously, that this is a serious incident. And we're social animals, human beings. We follow cues of other people. When other people react and respond, you'll see more people jump in. Be that person who jumps in. Be that person who helps somebody in need and somebody, in danger. Because at the end of the day, you could be the next victim. So you could stop that attack. You could stop it from going on and becoming a major attack. What's to say he didn't have a firearm with him? We know he didn't, but when you're in that tubular environment, you're a train, you're trapped, so you would hope more people would jump in, but then again, you watch what happened with Daniel Penny in New York City. He jumped in, he did the right thing, he was on trial, and that's what, a lot of people don't want to get involved.
Right. I mean, obviously, you assume a lot of risk in jumping into situations that you're unfamiliar with, for sure. What would you say is the most effective way for a bystander to alert authorities of an emergency situation?
See, well, you're kind of trapped. You're on that train. Like I said, you're in a tube, the tunnel, and you're on the train car, which is a tube. There's really not much you could do till the train stops. And, it's going to take time for the police to respond. But there were people on the train that could have assisted in putting her out. She was rolling on the ground from what I've read and seen. And it wasn't until she got to the platform at the first station they stopped at that people actually extinguished her. Like, you know what? If you're not going to get involved and stop the attack, you could at least stop the damage that's taking place afterwards. If it's your coat, taking your coat off and wrapping that young lady in to extinguish the flames, you would hope people would jump in and take some kind of action.
You mentioned the Penny situation in New York. Obviously, we've seen it because so many people took their phones out and recorded it. Should people try to record it for the sake of a possible investigation that might play out later, or does that just create more risk?
I mean, well, I would rather have people, instead of taking their phone out to record, to step in to intervene. They had to see this guy, and from everything I've seen and read, he dumped the gas on her, she got up, ran away. So they saw him trying to light the bottle. Apparently he dropped it, then he did light her. Nobody could have intervened in between there. It didn't look like a packed train, but there were a couple people on the train with her at the time of the attack that somebody could have intervened and stopped that attack, or at least assisted her.
Yeah. There's got to be a sense, though, of shock, too, that goes over people, like, what am I looking at? Because no one thinks that something like that is going to happen in front of them. And does that hinder reports to police? Like, I'm not even sure if I could tell this story the way it happened because of the shock I was in.
So in most major attack scenarios, where there's an active shooter or active attack like this, most people do deny initially that there's an attack going on. And, your brain sees it like, wait, this is out of the norm. This doesn't normally occur. And you go into denial. Then you're going into deliberation. Like, what should I do? Should I act? Should I not act? Then you move to that time where it's decisive moment where you're going to take action, whether it's to run, hide, fight. So, people do. And it's, like I said, it's a natural reaction. It's something that you don't normally see. And, same thing if you saw somebody getting stabbed, you'd be like, wait, what did I just see?
Mm-hmm.
So this is, extraordinary incident and horrible. I feel horrible for this young lady.
Yeah. And does it go into, like, can police trust the account of people who may have, like, did I see what I think I saw? How from a law enforcement perspective, how do you break down, like, no, this is a legit account versus I'm not quite sure they got it right. I think they were a little fuzzy at the time.
So you could have a serious criminal incident and you could have 20 eyewitnesses and you could have 20 different versions of what happened, from, let's say the color of a handgun. It was black, it was stainless steel, it was gold, to he had a gray hooded sweatshirt on and it was a white hooded sweatshirt. So, you got to go through everybody, you got to interview everybody. And thankfully, in our transit systems now, between the trains, the platforms, the stations, and, the police did a great job following the incident, gathering evidence. I mean, even all the way back to the gas station where he purchased the gasoline. So, eventually they're going to get caught.
Yeah. Do transit agencies actually provide some information? I don't know, some information to passengers on how to respond to emergencies like this?
Yeah, I know in New York City and at the Port Authority facilities, we always had, in the train cars, there was posters and there is emergency call buttons on the trains, on the platforms. And, these major transit systems like Chicago, New York, and other major cities, the camera network is extensive in these systems. So, you might not think you're being watched, you're being watched. And thankfully they had all of the videos in the train car that they could use for the investigation.
Yeah. Given the things that you've seen from, and maybe talk to us about some of the things that you did see in terms of crimes on the Port Authority and how those investigations played out, thinking in mind of the bystanders, like how they were a part of it, how they aided you all.
Okay. So first off, transportation facilities, they're magnets for the mentally ill, the homeless, the non-domiciled population, and these are the people that are violent. I mean, I was reading articles about the suspect in this case where he's been arrested multiple times for just punching people and attacking people. So, when you're in a transit facility, like I said, you got to take that into account. And people are usually in such a rush and not paying attention. You have to take your time, be aware of your surroundings, no matter where you go. And I used to tell people when you're taking the subway, don't step up to that yellow line at the end of the platform. You're making yourself a potential victim, especially when you have your headphones on and somebody's going to push you in front of a train. Stay with your back to the wall. There's a lot of steps you can take. But, listen, we've seen some horrific crimes. The Port Authority operated the Port Authority bus terminal, which is the largest bus terminal in the world. 8,000 buses a day go through there, so a couple 100,000 passengers a day. We operated the busiest airports, Kennedy, LaGuardia, and Newark. We had the PATH system, which is an underground railroad from New York to New Jersey, 400,000 passengers a day. So, anything you see on your transit systems in Chicago, we saw there.
Yeah. And what would you like to see moving forward that could be done to better protect people from these types of incidents?
Well, the first thing I would like to see is everyday citizens becoming more involved. Listen, police officers aren't omnipresent. We're not going to be everywhere. You can't be everywhere. You see somebody in need, help out. And that goes for, I've been teaching a lot of active attack classes, and I'm telling people when I'm teaching it, learn basic first aid skills, learn CPR, learn, how to stop the bleed. There's a course given by DHS. It's a 10-minute PowerPoint online. You could save somebody's life that could potentially die from bleeding out. So, there's things you could do that could save somebody. Even in the event, if you don't get involved in stopping an attack, you could get involved afterwards and you could save somebody's life. You could put a tourniquet on somebody, you could apply pressure to a wound and stop bleeding. We just got to become better people, better citizens still.
Yeah. When you see something like this happen, do you think, here we go again, or what does go through your mind?
Well, unfortunately, working, like I said, 25 years of my 33 were in a transit police department. So these were incidents that we did see. We saw things like this frequently, and you saw a lot of unprovoked violent attacks. And like I said, the common denominator was, the situational awareness. These people weren't paying attention. They didn't see the potential threat, and they didn't react in time. Like, not that you're expecting to be attacked, but you have to be aware where you are. You're not in your own car. You're not in your home. You're in a strange, surrounding environment. So you are a potential victim. And these are spots where, there's not a cop everywhere.
Well, again, and can't say it enough, we're certainly hoping that the young woman makes a full recovery. But we certainly appreciate your time today and sharing your expertise for sure. We don't want to see anyone else go through what she went through, but you're correct that we hope that if someone does have an emergency, others would be willing to step in.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Happy Thanksgiving to you. Take care.
Thank you.
All right. 3:42 right now. We'll be right back. .45 Bears, Blackhawks, Bulls. Oh my, it is always a great thing to be a sports fan in the city of Chicago, but right now we've got some things that are really exciting us. So I want to bring in Chris Kay with our wonderful sports department here. Thanks so much for your time. I know you all are busy.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it being on always.
So let's start with the Bears since we have a game coming up this weekend against the Steelers. All right. Maybe can we do an injury report first? Is everyone even going to be in working order for the game?
So we got some good news today, actually. Jalen Johnson, who's been out since the second week of the season, their star cornerback, was a full participant today. So that
Ooh.
bodes well for getting him back for Sunday. Whether or not he actually plays remains to be seen because the Bears do play 2 games in 5 days.
Oof.
That's going to be a quick turnaround for him. But I think the one thing I'm still watching is the Bears' 3 linebackers, Noah Sewell, Tremaine Edmonds, and TJ Edwards they all did not practice today. So that's not a good sign on a Thursday. We'll see what happens on Friday because that gives you a pretty good indication of whether or not players are going to be playing or not. If I had to expect or maybe kind of guess a little bit, maybe one of those players is limited tomorrow and they play on Friday, but it's really kind of up in the air right now, and it's a little difficult to tell. But right now, honestly, the biggest injury report, the thing that everybody's watching, is whether or not Aaron Rodgers will play on Sunday. He's been limited today with a wrist injury, and going back to Sunday where he suffered a small fracture in his non-throwing hand. So we'll see how that works. We'll see what happens. And, some Bears fans maybe want to avoid playing Aaron Rodgers, a guy that's had their number for the last 2 decades, it seems.
Yeah, he has iconic words that he had there that no one can get out of their heads. So when you said 2 games in 5 days, that's the Steelers and the Eagles. That game is right on our air. And I guess if you're weighing, if somebody is like maybe on the edge, can they come back? Which game do you put them in if they can only do one?
Oh my gosh, if you had to take a pick, I guess if you had to take a pick, but if you want to go by standings and tiebreakers and all that stuff when it comes to the playoffs, because we're talking about the playoffs now with the Bears, I would say that if you're a Bears fan, you would rather have the Eagles game. You'd rather win that game on the road. Not only shows you can win in a hostile environment, but also it gives you a key data point when it comes to tiebreakers in the NFC, kind of getting an in-conference win there. Obviously, if you're going to the game on Sunday, my dad and my uncles will be there, so they want to see a win. They want to see them win, especially beat Aaron Rodgers if he plays. But if you want to talk about standings specifically, it would mean a little bit more come playoff time if the Bears beat the Eagles on Black Friday.
How awesome and maybe surprising is it that we're even talking about the Bears possibly being in playoff contention, especially given how the season started?
Oh my goodness. It's incredible. It's wild. It's astounding. You can think of so many different words to kind of just piece things together. Because, this is exactly what the Bears kind of materialized in their head when they hired Ben Johnson. This is a guy that was going to set the culture. This is a guy that was going to set a standard and win games. But we didn't really know if winning games was in the cards right away, especially like you mentioned, the 0-2 start where you gave up 52 points to the Detroit Lions. And you're kind of thinking, well, what's next? How do we get this team from point A to point B and then from C to D all the way to Super Bowl champions like Ben was promising in his opening press conference? But now we're starting to see a lot of things. That's something I've been asking a lot of players the last couple of weeks is, last year this team lost a lot of these games. You're losing these games where you were one score, and this year you seem to be winning them. And why can't you kill the Bears this year? They believe. They really do believe. And I think that's the biggest thing. And it's a big reason why they're in playoff contention. And you have to take them seriously if you're playing football in November. You have a winning record and you're first in your division.
All right. Now, speaking of winning record, some people would say, how many teams have they beat with winning records?
Oh my goodness. See, it's a really tough argument to make because obviously you want to point out the fact that sure, a lot of teams that the Bears have played haven't been over 500. And in a perfect world, if you were a contender, you would have some of these games like the Detroit game at the beginning of the season and say, hey, you got to beat a team like that if you want to prove that you're a Super Bowl contender. But I think right now, specifically, that's just how the Bears schedule is lined up. But they really haven't had many games against many teams that have been over 500 with those winning records. However, those games are coming in very short order. The Steelers is one of them. They're leading the AFC North right now. Then the Eagles, who are reigning Super Bowl champs, leading the NFC East, and then 2 against the Packers, and then they got a game against the Browns, which is a game that you should expect to win, especially for the Bears at this point. But then you also get the Lions later in the season. You also get the 49ers later in the season. This next 2-month stretch for the Bears will tell us exactly what this team is. We know the Bears are good. We just don't know how good. And we're going to figure that out in the coming weeks, but also in the coming months.
So thus far, what grade would you give Ben Johnson in season 1?
Oh my goodness, unequivocal A. Unequivocal A. It's in the short, I would say a little short of A+, just because that first game against the Vikings, you kind of wonder if you took care of business there, you'd be 8-2, and you'd have a little bit more breathing room at the top of the conference. But I think right now, considering how last year went, when you think of how many ways the Bears lost, you think how demoralized not only the fan base, but also people in this building right now at Hallis Hall, they're all demoralized too. But now they all believe. Everybody's believing that this team can win games and then maybe even win the division. And that belief is one of those snowballing things that you have to take account into. And this team really isn't much different from the one that lost a lot of games last year. But Ben Johnson has taken it and injected this belief that they can win games, and it's really starting to show on the field. And to do that in not just one season, but to quite literally 10 games, that's an A for me.
All right. Well, morale matters. So we'll see how things go this upcoming weekend. And then we've got to get ready for the rocky road ahead. But let's move on to the Blackhawks. So we're finally seeing, it feels like, Connor Bedard kind of coming to his own.
Yeah, it's really cool to see how this is all working out, not just in the Bears, their headquarters here where their young players are showing up, but with the Blackhawks. The one thing I'm really starting to take a liking to is they needed to take a step forward, not just in skill set, but they needed to take a step in development. And I didn't think they were going to take that step this quickly in this season under a new head coach, Jeff Blashill, but Connor Bedard's looking like that guy. He's also acting like that guy in the locker room too. When I'm talking to a lot of my friends around, saying, "Hey, what's going on with this Hawks team?" And they're saying they're just older. They're older because they've been in the league for a couple of years now. They have guys like Frank Nazar, who's a kind of a cool running mate with Connor Bedard, where they're kind of 1A, 1B right now. And Connor is just on one. And I think we haven't seen that level of hockey and play at such a peak, and also an expected peak, since maybe the Kane and Taves days where they were winning Stanley Cups. And obviously they're not there yet. They need to maybe get a couple more players, maybe get a little in the back end of the defensive line too. But those players are coming. Those players are in the pipeline. And I think the one thing about the Bedard situation, you kind of look at and say, this kid's growing, he's growing some hairs on his chest. He's that young guy that's really starting to grow into the role of star in Chicago. In the first couple of years, everybody looks around and says, well, it's a little rocky. Well, yeah, because he's 18, 19 years old. But now at 20, he's looking like the star that they drafted. And I think that's really incredible for him. It's really incredible for this coaching staff to get that out of him so quickly in this season too.
Yeah, I mean, it's also like that level of expectation people have when these kids are young men are drafted, where it was like, oh, he's gonna be the next Wayne Gretzky, and it's like it puts a lot of pressure on somebody.
Oh, immense amount of pressure, especially for Connor, who he was seen as this prodigy that's going to come in right away and change the Blackhawks foundation. And it's kind of interesting when you consider where the Blackhawks were, where they're really after all the sexual abuse scandals that were rocking this franchise, and they needed a win so bad. And the first couple of years, you're starting to wonder, well, is it going to be the win that they thought it was? But this stuff takes time. And you have to kind of imagine not that many 18-year-old players are playing in the NHL. That's a league that demands a level of physicality that not a lot of 18, 19, shoot, even 20, 22-year-olds can match.
Really good
But
point.
Connor in his first year, I mean, I remember watching him as a rookie out there. It was so clear how much better he was than everyone on the ice for the Blackhawks. But now you start to see it, and he's got other players kind of matching that talent level. I mean, Frank Nazar, Oliver Moore, also guys that are stepping up, and you're starting to see these lines start to form. And I think Kyle Davidson deserves some credit too, going out with guys like Tyler Bertuzzi, getting these kinds of guys, also Teuvo Teravainen, getting a guy that's familiar with the Blackhawks as well. And these are pieces that are slowly coming together. They're veteran, but they're also really young. And I think that youth is going to start taking grip and start taking hold of this franchise when those young players, like you mentioned, those young men are going to evolve into stars.
Yeah. All right. Now, you all were running around getting ready for your million different things that our sports team is getting ready for the next few days, the next few hours. I was running around earlier today getting ready for the million things that I had coming up here with the show, and I heard Horace Grant is in the building. And I'm like, what? We've got to talk about the Bulls.
Yeah, the Bulls are pretty exciting too. I mean, everything's exciting in Chicago now. I think really specifically when you look at what the Bulls have been doing, this is a team that nobody expected to shoot out as hot as they did. I think 6-1 record, and they kind of cooled off a little bit, but I think the one thing that they have specifically that's really shined is the coaching staff has gotten them in a position to win games, and they're taking advantage of that too. I really like Billy Donovan, obviously a Hall of Fame coach for a reason, but these young kids that they've got, like you mentioned, all kind of very similar to the Blackhawks, a bunch of young men that can take the next step to be stars, and I think we're starting to see them emerge short order here pretty quickly too.
Okay, now sometimes I feel like in the last few years, we've kind of seen them peak, but possibly at the wrong time in the season. What are you expecting this year?
Honestly, it's a really good question. I really don't know what to expect because usually the beginning of the season, the Bulls are really slow starters under Billy Donovan, especially when they had a lot of roster turnover. They had a lot of slow starts. They took a second to get into gear, but they shot out of the cannon right away. And I don't know. I really don't know what to expect. And maybe these young stars are really going to grow into the positions that Arturas Karnisovas thinks they were going to be. Especially that's a guy that kept saying we believe in these young players that they're going to grow into these starring roles. And we don't need a mega superstar like a lot of these NBA teams have. And I disagree with that. But also at this point, he's kind of right. The Bulls haven't need that mega superstar to win games. Now, do they need that to win an NBA championship? Probably. But that's a different conversation for a different day.
We'll leave it there. Chris K., what are you working on in Hallis Hall?
Oh, today we're working on, I'm doing a longer deep dive of a story into kind of what makes the Bears so unkillable. Why can't you beat this team? Why haven't teams been able to beat them? And I think the answers are going to be pretty surprising because they've been different all across the board with everyone I've asked here at Hallis Hall. And going into the weekend too, Northwestern plays Minnesota at Wrigley Field. It's a second of the Wrigley games they're going to play. If they one more win, they'll be bowl eligible. And then we'll take a look forward here, especially on my end, to the college football playoff and seeing everything that's going to happen there too.
Oh, so much going on. Sports fans, we're in heaven right now. Thank you, Chris. We appreciate
We're all super
it.
Busy. Thank you, Anita. Appreciate it.
Take care. 3:58, everyone. The news at 4 is next, but thank you so much for spending your time with me on this Thursday. I'll see you tomorrow right back here at 1 o'clock for more Chicago Live.